Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 267, Blachowicz versus Teixeira. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing this evening?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Obviously, we're recording this a day later than usual. Apologies to those who were waiting on the program. Certainly to those who reached out to us on Twitter and asked where the show was. I'm not going to lie. We do our best to bring you a reliable and consistent product, but it does feel kind of good, like the people miss it when it's a day late. So yeah, thanks for making us feel good about ourselves. First thing I want to say about this card, you and I have complained pretty heartily about the UFC's offerings in October so far. I mean, 3 fight night cards in a row that you could argue that there wasn't a single top 10 matchup on any of them. We've gone into that. Some of the fights ended up delivering anyway. Others didn't. It's been a weird month of filler cards, and that all changes this Saturday at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. I mean, the 6-fight main card here, at least 5 of the 6 are top 10 contender fights or better. I mean, obviously there are 2 title fights, but I mean, the least prominent fight in terms of strict ratings is the return of Khamzat Chimaev after a year off. I mean, this is as close to a pure gold UFC main card as you're likely to see this year. And then the undercard is probably better than any of the fight night cards we've had earlier this month all by itself. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I mean, how could you disagree? I mean, the card is absolutely sick. I mean, this card's sick. Next week's card is sick. And that's what happens when you keep having every fight night being like 2 relevant fighters and the rest of the card just card fillers. You kind of put all the ranked fighters in the same card. I'm looking at the card top to bottom, and I'm like, what is the worst fight? Like, there's maybe one bad fight on this card. Everything else is either a very good matchup or someone that you're intrigued in how they're going to do, someone's UFC debut, there's some kind of storyline, like even like a fight like Michal Oleksiejczuk versus Shamil Gamzatov.
Yeah.
You got Gamzatov, he's 14-0. Like, that's intriguing, I think maybe Petroski fight is versus who is if I'm saying that correctly, that's probably the only fight that's like, how'd this one get on the card? Everything else I really like.
It's a bit of an ironic name since his name is Who, and that's exactly what I said when I saw him show up on this card. Yeah. That is the one thing I'll say about this card. It's really heavy on Russian fighters, and it's heavy on Russian fighters that I think they've just been keeping them in a closet in Abu Dhabi waiting to come back, because there are a couple of fighters on here that actually it's been a year or more since they fought, and I kind of had to go back and be like, oh, right, that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And in a few cases, oh, is that guy still on roster? But almost without exception, there are people that I'm excited to see back in the cage.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm looking at this card, and I know I just said it. I'm probably repeat myself, but the card. I mean, we have 2 title fights, which is always exciting. We have probably, going from top to bottom, I'm saying 6, 7, 8 deep before you get to a fight. We'd be like, that one probably shouldn't be on a main card. Like, this is like,
dude. The prelim headliner, Amanda Ribas versus Virna Jandiroba, would have been no worse than the second best fight on any other card this month.
It could have been, it could have
been the headliner of instead of Dumont and Ladd.
That's right. It's just a really, really good card. There's some really fun talent all the way up and down the roster. Some intriguing matchups. I'm super excited, and we're going to talk more about the main event, co-main event, because I get more comments about that. But wait till we get to that.
Well, let me throw one thing out here, and I don't want to dive into the actual fight at all, because obviously we're probably going to spend 25 minutes on that thing when we get to it. But I mean, the fact that we have a title fight between Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira in 2021, and that there's no smoke and mirrors to it. Blachowicz is about to try and become one of only 5 people to defend the light heavyweight title more than once. Glover Teixeira has won his way to another title shot with another 5-fight win streak. This isn't some weird injury stung or COVID created title fight. Like, this is a real live light heavyweight title fight between Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira.
Yeah.
When could you have predicted that?
No, if you went back 5 years ago, or how many years ago was when Jan Blachowicz could not wrestle at all, was getting taken down by Devin Clark and guys like that, and Glover Teixeira was 37, 30 years old, getting knocked out. Look like he lost his athleticism. If you gave me odds, like what's more likely to happen? These two guys headline a UFC, or these two guys fight say go back 5 years ago, say 5 years from now, these two guys either headline a UFC or fight each other on a Bellator prelims. I'd go fight each other on a Bellator prelims. Instead, not only, and that was only headlining UFC, not one of them's a champion defending his title against the other, and rightfully so. This wasn't a Glover Teixeira retirement fight. Let's put him in there, Dan Henderson style kind of thing. Like, he actually earned this. He's on a long winning streak. And if you're a struggling fighter, if you're a middling UFC talent, how do you not look at this main event and just be inspired?
Oh, dude, Jan Blachowicz looked like a bust. He lost three of his first 5 fights in the UFC. We're like, oh, this is just another one of those bums who comes over from, continental Europe and it turns out to be like no big deal. How wrong would we have been? One thing I'll throw out, obviously I say there's no smoke and mirrors here. This is a legit, this is the real title fight. Obviously the specter of Jon Jones is hanging out there, but let's be honest. One, I think he's probably the best light heavyweight in the world right now. You and I both think he might be the greatest fighter of all time, but he was getting closer and closer. His opponents the field was catching up to him even at the time he stepped away to step up to heavyweight. That was kind of part of the thing.
Yeah.
Is he was reaching a point of diminishing returns where he'd close to clean out the division and the fights were getting tougher. Number two, dude, this is Jon Jones. He would have done something to get himself fucking stripped of the belt between then and now. Right. No, even if he hadn't moved up after the Reyes fight, like, look at him recently.
He just had a domestic.
Yeah, they'd probably be fighting for a vacant title tonight if he hadn't moved up. He would have done something to cost himself the belt between then and now. Like, there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
it's just.
Yeah, 2 things I want to say. First of all, I said getting out wrestled by Devin Clark. I mixed that one up with Patrick Cummings. Patrick Cummings was the who wrestled. Devin Clark he actually beat, but but Patrick Cummings in Buffalo. I was actually there in attendance. Or Patrick Cummings just rinsed and repeat. But still, you lost to Patrick Cummings. 3.5. 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, like it wasn't that long ago. And the second point is, Jon Jones does look like he has some like diminishing, like his skills are kind of dropping down. But looking at this main event and where these two fighters are right now, but we don't even know if that's true. Like it could not be true because obviously by these two fighters, you never really know when a fighter is done.
There you go. You never know, but. If any guys were going to be either elevating their game in their late 30s or maintaining it in their early 40s, it was going to be these two guys. These are two hard hat wearing guys that you can see the work ethic on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something that Jon Jones almost brags about not having. So
yeah, I know. And Glover Teixeira to be 42 years old and fighting. He's the underdog, and I understand that, but just to be in this position is absolutely incredible. And I'm not going to give my pick yet.
New England's finest.
I want Glover Teixeira to win. Nothing against Jan Blachowicz. He's just an incredible story. Everyone gave up on. It would just be absolutely incredible. Way to cap off his career. And if he wins, I don't want to ever see him fight again. I want him to retire on top.
And he's the one guy that I think might do it. That is just smart and confident and experienced enough that he might do it.
He has a gym with full, a gym with all these people. And guess what? You win the UFC title, even more people going to start going to your gym.
Yes. All right. Well, the rest of this conversation is probably 2 hours away. For the people watching this, closer to 3 for us with all the interstitial stuff. So why don't we dive into this actual card starting from the bottom? The UFC 267 prelims kick off with a flyweight matchup between Tagir Ulanbekov and Allan Nascimento. Ulanbekov, the 30-year-old Dagestani, is 13-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. He made his debut last October at UFC Fight Night Moraes versus Sandhagen, where he took a unanimous decision over Bruno Silva. He'll be taking on Nascimento. The 30-year-old Brazilian is 18-5 overall. This will be his UFC debut. He actually appeared on Dana White's Contender Series Brazil all the way back in 2018, lost a split decision in a real fun match to Raulian Paiva, who is on UFC roster as we speak, disappeared for 3 years, came back this past July, choked out a local guy at Brazilian Steel Fist Fight Night, whatever the number was. And that apparently was good enough to get him the short notice call up here. Odds on this one do heavily favor Ulanbekov. He is minus 360. You can get Nascimento around plus 300 as the substantial underdog. I said one of the themes of tonight is, oh, that guy, I remember. Allan Nascimento was one of them because I actually paid attention to the first season of Contender Series Brazil. Nascimento was an interesting guy. His nickname is Puro Osso, which my Brazilian nickname dictionary tells me it literally means like all bone, and it's just a reference to him being a tall and skinny flyweight. Yeah. He's like a 5'9" flyweight, kind of a bony looking dude, kind of a flyweight Cole Miller type, where he just always looks like he's cutting weight even when he's not. Unless he's made substantial improvements in his game in the 3 years he's been gone, this is going to be rough sledding against Tagir Ulanbekov. Nascimento was always kind of a middling prospect in my mind. I mean, he lost a real fun fight to Raulian Paiva, but Raulian Paiva is not a super high-level UFC flyweight. Always been competitive. He's a opportunistic grappler without great wrestling, so his game can be neutralized by guys that he can't get it to the ground on his terms, and that is absolutely Tagir Ulanbekov. Ulanbekov, he comes from Eagles MMA, so he's a Khabib Nurmagomedov protege, obviously a former student of the late Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, and he's very much the cookie cutter Dagestani fighter, because most of the ones that don't have Khabib's athleticism, he's more like a flyweight like Rustam Khabilov or even Islam Makhachev, where he's really strong. He's a very persistent wrestler, just not quite the explosion of a Khabib, and his striking game is a little rough on the feet. He's a good boxer, but not terribly fast of hand or foot. I don't think it's going to matter here, because Nascimento's best route to victory is to get him on the ground, sweep and submit. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Ulanbekov is going to take him down pretty easily and be strong and savvy enough to just kind of lock him down on top. Not super pretty, but give me Ulanbekov by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I think your breakdown is really good. I'll talk. First of all, there's a couple things I want to point out. So we figured out who was the one person that did pay attention to Tough Brazil. So Tough Brazil, right? Or was it?
No, it was Dana White's. It was Contender Series Brazil.
All right, I blew my own joke. That's because I am not in pay-per-view mode, as this is a pay-per-view worthy card. You are straight pay-per-view mode. The way you were just rolling off the Russians' names off your tongue like that, very impressive, my man. For me, I'll try. I'm not gonna do it as well as you did, but Ulanbekov is, I think he's Khabib's cousin or something like that. I don't know if
they say all those dudes are Khabib's cousin. I don't buy that shit for a minute.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Like, you know what I mean? I know we say that every time, but like, the way you were saying his name, I know like how much Dagestani blood you have in you. But
dude, if I just hit all this with a foreguard, I can tell you that I'm Khabib's cousin. Like I could pass.
That's right. So yeah, I don't know if he's really Khabib's cousin. That's what I heard. I don't know. One of those. As you mentioned, you mentioned how long and lengthy Nascimento is. Ulanbekov is long and lengthy himself too. What I like about his game is you talked about his striking. I think I rate his striking a little higher than you do, but his striking all comes down. It's all like the foundation of his striking game is his forward pressure. And that's something like we've always talked about. I love the forward pressure. He cuts off the cage really well. He uses feints well, just a high output, crisp jab, good straight right, kind of his basic 1-2s, real nice snap on his shots. He throws a lot of combos, which I love. So, like, not only is he having forward pressure with his footwork, he's actually thrown out the shots in front of you. He does stand a little tall to my liking because he kind of has a Muay Thai style to his game. Keeps his chin a little high. Plus, he's tall. But hard calf kicks. He doesn't check leg kicks. When you go back to his fight against Bruno Silva, Bruno had a lot of success with those calf kicks. But what I liked about about him is that he was mentally tough enough to deal with the pain, to still win a close fight. And his legs were hurt very early in that fight, and still find a way to win. You mentioned obviously his Beef's cousin, great wrestling. I love his upper body takedowns and trips. Like it's a really thing of beauty. Like he has great entries, as all those Russians do, but a lot of his stuff comes from like body locks where he uses his length, nice trips, heavy top pressure, strong takedown defense if you try to take him down. When he has been taken down, quickly gets right back up to his feet. He's got hit six subs in his career. And honestly, the difference between him and Bruno Silva in that fight was that he just pushed hard. Like his cardio in that fight. As far as Nascimento goes, what I like about his game is he's got 23 fights heading into his UFC career. Like that's a big deal. Obviously there's always going to be UFC jitters, but having that many fights, you've seen a lot. He's been very inactive. He hasn't fought in, I think it was like you said, one time in 3 years. Which obviously,
and let me throw something out real quick, because he in 2013 and 2014 he fought like I think 12 times in like total in those 2 years, like 5 or 6 times a year, and then disappeared for 3 years after he lost on the Contender Series. Yeah,
it's kind of weird. So, but what I like about it is like not only does he have 23, which is a good total number of fights. He fought for the Legacy title. He fought in Contender Series Brazil. So like it's good quality fights too. He's a long and lengthy striker. He's a Muay Thai specialist. Throws your basic 1-2 down the pipe. I'd say he has plus power. That just goes from being a big guy. I like when he gets in close. He looks for like slicing inside elbows. Throws a lot of kicks. Knees up the middle. Knees in the clinch. You mentioned his wrestling though, especially his takedown notes, is really, really bad, like terrible. But he's very flexible. He's got 9 subs, a lot of subs off his back. Likes his triangles. He also likes to attack legs. He's got a leg lock submission. He's got heel hook submission. He's got knee bar submission. Like he's got a lot going for that. As far as prediction goes, I'm picking Ulanbekov. I really like this guy. Like I said, that's why I think I like his striking more than you do. I think he's going to be a ranked flyweight soon. I think he's physically tough to deal with due to size. Obviously, that's not going to be a big advantage in this fight, but against most guys, I think he's well-rounded. I think he's better than Nascimento everywhere. So give me Ulanbekov by decision, and I actually think it's going to be absolute blowout. I think he's going to batter. I think he's going to batter Nascimento. He might get a stoppage late, but I'm going to say Nascimento makes it to the decision.
There you go. Kick off the night with 2 strong picks for Tagir Ulanbekov to keep the ball rolling at flyweight. Next up on the UFC 267 prelims is a matchup that I will just say right off the bat, I cannot believe that this fight is second out of the gate. That tells you how loaded this card is. It is a lightweight matchup between Magomed Mustafaev and Damir Ismagulov. Mustafaev, the 33-year-old Russian, is 14-3 overall. He's 3-2 in the UFC in pretty strong strength of schedule. He has lost to Brad Riddell and Kevin Lee while beating Rafael Fiziev, Joe Proctor, and Peter Hallman. He is taking on Ismagulov. The 30-year-old Russian is 23-1 overall. He is a perfect 4-0 since joining the UFC back in late 2018. He has beaten over the course of those 4 fights Alex Gorgees, Joel Alvarez, Thiago Moises, and Rafael Alves. That most recent one back in May at UFC Fight Night, Font versus Garbrandt. Ismagulov, one of the top prospects in the lightweight division, is a comfortable favorite here. He is minus 270, where Mustafaev is plus 230 as the underdog. Keith, tell me what's good about this fight, who you have winning, and how.
So I'm glad that you owned me first, because the first thing that I don't think is good is the odds. I never check the odds before I make my pick. When I make up my mind, I don't want Vegas to influence my pick. But for this one, I was like, I'm just, I already made my pick. I'm like, I'm curious who the favorite is. Like, that's what I was thinking. Like, who's the favorite? And then I look, and the odds were even bigger earlier this week, where Ismagulov was like a 3-1 favorite. I mean, he's still almost a 3-1 favorite. And I was like, wow, that's really messed up. But no, I mean, Ismagulov is really good. So don't get me wrong. He's well-rounded. He's a long and lengthy fighter. Good output. He's pretty fast. He's accurate. What I love about his game on the feet is not a lot of tells. Everything's kind of short. I'd say plus power, not fight-ending power, but plus power. He works behind a busy jab. He has a Muay Thai style to his game, or you mentioned kickboxing style to the game, where he stands up a little high. But even though he stands up high and his chin's a little high, I like that he kind of has like a one-sided high guard where he keeps his hand really glued to his face. I said that last time he fought. Hard kicks. He targets the calves. Good takedown defense. If you try to take him down, he will occasionally look for a takedown himself. And he does it well when he blends his striking into his takedowns really well. So he sets up his takedowns with his striking. He likes a lot of snap singles, kind of things where he's kind of, if he's missing, he's darting off the side. So a snap single or what's the word I'm looking for? A sweep single, I should say. No, it's not a sweep single. So he's kind of, if he misses, he kind of misses without his opponent on top of him. But when it comes to his wrestling, that's like second. He's more of a like sprawl and brawl guy where he's like a counter wrestler. But strong takedown defense. He did fade surprisingly against Rafael Alves, which was surprising to me, which I don't like. But that simply might be he comes out really aggressive early, that he can just kind of turn down the output a little bit more earlier. Then maybe he won't fade as late. Mustafaev, the thing I don't like about him, he's 33 years old. Like, that's concerning to me. He's had 3 fights in 5 years. But I want to talk about his last fight. His last fight was against Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell's freaking good, like really good. Like,
yeah, we both think Brad Riddell is probably top 10 on talent right now.
Yeah. Me and you are both. We're on the Brad Riddell train. I would take Brad Riddell over Ismagulov right now, and I like Ismagulov. I'm talking great about the guy. And Brad Riddell is really good. I think it was a split decision. I believe
it was a splitter. Yep, it was a split. And
I just rewatched it, and I thought Mustafaev won. I gave him the first 2 rounds. So, anyways, back to his style. He's a bit of an unorthodox striker, little awkward. He switches stances a lot. He can be low output, which would be a huge problem against Ismagulov if he lets Ismagulov kind of bank rounds with just his output. As I mentioned, he does fight at both stances. I think he's better from the southpaw stance. That's because he's got a lot of pop from there. He's got a lot more kicks from that one, and he throws a lot of spinning attacks. Though I think he spins too much. Like, he's got like an Alexander Slamenko game to him, where it's like the spins are so nice when they land, and it's the thing of beauty. But like when you miss, it's just a waste of time. Really kind of messes up your own timing. But I love his south from the southpaw stance. I love his body kicks from there. He doesn't check leg kicks. I probably should stop saying that because no one really does. But he's an excellent wrestler, like really good. Good at scrambles. And one reason why he's so good, he's good at scrambles, but he's good at controlling his opponent's hips and good at just being so physically strong. Like, he knows how to, like, he's got that, I don't know, like, Rush, like, he's Russian. He's probably in Russia, like, he's doing the Rocky IV training,
like
but
carrying the log up the hill.
Yeah, and he just, like, we've talked about fighters before that were just like, I don't know this guy's personal life, but I just look at a guy and be like, this guy's a man's man. Like, this guy, he's
rugged.
Yeah,
he's a rugged dude.
Like, Mustafaev, like, probably just changed his transmission last week and stuff. Like, that's him. Like, that's what he does for fun. But not only is he physically strong, but he stays glued onto his opponents, but in the right spots. Like, his hips are underneath his opponent's hips. He's making work. Like, go back to the Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell, fantastic fighter. Every time Brad Riddell got to his feet, the mat returns, the staying on, making him work for every single inch. And then if he gets you down, he does have some subs. 3 sub wins. Some things I don't like, though, is Brad Riddell hurt him late in the fight. Though, to his credit, he's never been knocked out in his career. So, as far as prediction goes, I already mentioned that the lines are way off. To me, this should be as close to pick 'em. Anybody who has confidence, but like, I understand why Ismagulov is the favorite. He's, he's got this huge winning streak. He's way more active. But I'm going to go with Mustafaev in an upset. His wrestling game is so good. There's going to be some back and forth, positions, really good. I'm worried that he might let Ismagulov get away early by not challenging him on the striking. But if he can wrestle Ismagulov, who is the better striker, and if he can take Brad Riddell down, I think he can take Ismagulov down and keep him down. Give me Mustafaev, but because I have no confidence, I'm going to say by split decision. And this is early. He's a 3-1 underdog. This is my upset special.
There you go. I'm totally with you in that even though I understand why the odds are what they are, they felt off to me as well. I mean, Ismagulov has that thing where if you haven't been beaten in a long time, or you haven't been beaten at all, but I mean, he hasn't been beaten in a long time, never been beaten in the UFC. like those lines tend to keep growing because people can't even picture something they haven't seen yet. Like, kind of like, I don't know, like you and I are old guys, like the Lyoto Machida thing, where until the first Shogun fight, like no one even hit him cleanly. So it was like, well, if somebody beats this guy, what does it even look like? Like I think
that's because
Ismagulov
Lyoto Machida had the style that no one saw before. Nobody could figure it out, and it was like, oh, the style was, pressure him and don't let him throw his low output one strike, like throw 8 punches at him. But anyways, carry on.
Yeah. I love Mustafaev's game, even if it's frustrating sometimes. Like sometimes it looks miserable for his opponents. Like he made Brad Riddell look miserable for 2/3 of that fight. Just one of those guys were like, oh man, this must suck. It must be so frustrating just to get back up, get hauled back down, just have him stuck to you, stuck to you, mashing you against the fence, just moving his hips and trying to like dump you back to the ground. Looks miserable. I agree with you that the low output can be a problem against Ismagulov. Throwing spinning stuff, that's going to get him in trouble too, because some of the spinning stuff he throws, Ismagulov is just going to step in behind it, grab him, and throw him down, and he's going to be like down with Ismagulov on his back. Like I can totally see that happening. Ismagulov is more like the Terminator, like high pressure, comes forward, but everything's tight, robotic, like, and I mean that in a good way. Like he's robotic in a good way, just kind of relentless. Whereas Mustafaev, he's a little more on the wild side. He comes at you like a house on fire. His entries to get into the wrestling, sometimes they're not even like really a shot where he like drops levels and comes in on your hips. He just kind of smashes into you and just trusts himself to get his hips below yours, just kind of win the shoulder pad battle in football and put you on your ass. I would feel more confident in Mustafaev, except for the fact that he's been off for so long, so often recently. You pointed out he's fought like 3 times in the last 5 years, because those last 2 wins of his have aged really well. Like the taking Brad Riddell to the wire, that's going to keep aging well. Lancing Rafael Fiziev looks really, really good right now. Like knocking Rafael Fiziev out on the feet looks really, really good right now. But that was 2.5 years ago. And he's not gotten younger since then. He's 33. So we have an injury-prone 33-year-old guy. Like, if he's as good as he was in the Riddell fight, this should be a pick'em.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable. Please.
Yeah, can I jump in real quick? Just
Please.
because this is something I wanted to say, but you by mentioning his last 3 fights, they're right. They're absolutely spaced out. But just this is why I'm saying, like, even if it sounds like you're going with Ismagulov, and I understand, like, I was very on the fence, so I want to make people understand that. But look at his last 3 opponents: Kevin Lee, Rafael Fiziev, and Brad Riddell. Wouldn't you say Ismagulov in that group of 3 fighters isn't it a step down from those 3 fighters? Like, or at least
certainly from Riddell and the 2016 version of Lee. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would put Fiziev over him too, but still, like the whole point is, at worst it's a lateral. All right, he was a plus 115 underdog to Kevin Lee, plus 115 underdog to Rafael Fiziev, and negative 145 favorite against Brad Riddell, and now he's a massive favorite. I mean, massive underdog to Ismagulov. See what I'm saying? Like the lines, even if you think he's gonna lose, like what the hell? Anyways, carry on. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's a good point, dude. I mean, Kevin Lee in 2016, that's a tough fight for Mustafaev. It's a huge lightweight who's just as good a wrestler, and I think Kevin Lee's grappling, like in submission game, is actually quietly his best weapon. Even though the announcers call him a wrestler and he wants to be a boxer, his submission game is, I think, his best weapon. Like that's a tough opponent. Yeah, I am gonna lean Ismagulov here just as the busier fighter who's just, like kept his tools sharp, but I don't have any kind of minus 275 confidence about this at all. I expect him to win a decision, maybe a splitter, and to have like anyone who's betting on him really, really scared at least some point in the fight. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all if Mustafaev just comes out and puts it on him in the first round and this becomes a nail biter, but I will go with Ismagulov by decision. Next up on the UFC 267 prelims is a middleweight matchup between Yaozong Hu and Andre Petroski. Hu, the 26-year-old China native, is 3-2 overall. He is 0-2 since joining the UFC all the way back in November of 2018. This is his first fight, or since joining the UFC back in November 2017. This is his first fight since November 2018. He has lost to Cyril Asker and Rashad Coulter in his 2 UFC bouts. And that right there should tell you how long he's been gone, because neither of them dudes is in the UFC anymore. Andre Petroski, who won on the Ultimate Fighter 29 finale just a month or 2 ago, a much more familiar face. The 30-year-old New Jersey native is 6-1 overall, and he is 1-0 in the UFC, having walloped Michael Gilmore back at UFC on ESPN, Barboza versus Chikadze, which again doubled as the tough finale. Odds on this one heavily favor Petroski. He is minus 230. Who is plus 190. And no, we're not going to start the whole Abbott and Costello routine there. To the people who made those odds, I'm not saying I disagree with you, but what are you basing it on? Yaozong, who is a 5-fight veteran who hasn't fought in 3 years, and he stepped up on short notice for like a heavyweight bout in 2017. He is a fighter that, after I made the obvious joke and said, who? I was like, I can't believe he's still on roster. I know the UFC is deeply invested, both literally and figuratively, in getting prominent Chinese stars to justify their broadcast deal over there. But Yaozong, who is a 26-year-old middleweight who I think his fight against Rashad Coulter in the UFC was even at light heavyweight, maybe. Like, I don't even know if he's fought at middleweight in the UFC. And Petroski at least is a known quantity. He is a decorated college wrestler. You look at him, and his game is just, his physique screams it. I am an aggressive wrestle boxer, in that order. Like, I will punch to get in range, then I'm going to throw you down and mash you into guacamole on the canvas. I look forward to your X's and O's breakdown of this, but considering that Hu has not looked terribly impressive against either of his 2 UFC opponents, neither of whom is still in the UFC, both of whom like lost their way out, like everything about him just seems to scream, I'm not UFC level. And I saw Andre Petroski against someone who was not UFC level in Michael Gilmore 2 months ago, and someone who specifically couldn't stop his takedowns. I know how this movie ends. Give me Andre Petroski by second round TKO on the ground.
Yeah, so I love that you talked about, we kept saying, we're not going to mention who, but then you say you're going to take Andre because he's a known quantity. This your dad joke right there. I also love that you said, hey, we're not going to do the Abbott and Costello thing, but every one of our listeners, or I should say every one of our regular listeners said, oh, these 2 near 40-year-old men are definitely going to make that joke. I know one of the guys that watches our show a lot is my buddy Colin Crandall. He's the host of the MMA Power Hour. Make sure you check out that show. It's really good. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Like, not just in MMA, he's one of the nicest people I've ever met ever. He's just a great dude. He actually called me and left a message. I have to call him back. But 100% Colin would have made that joke, because we're corny. Colin, you're even cornier. Mr. California cool. So anyways, I know he listens, so I want to throw that out. He's a great dude. Make sure you check out his stuff, MMA Power Hour. And anyways, back to this fight. Yeah, Andre Petroski, he's a southpaw who he has tight boxing similar to Glover Teixeira in the point where it's inside and it's short, tight hooks. As he has plus power, he uses a lot of feints, especially feint shots. Like, he feints his shots. But Brian Battle hurt him on the feet. He is a little flat-footed. He has a bit of a stationary target. And like, make no mistake, all the stuff I was saying nice about his striking, it's all 100% show to set up his chance to close the distance. Where you mentioned, I think he was a Pennsylvania state champion wrestler. I know he wrestled the NCAA. He's a great wrestler. I apologize. I might not have the right state. It might not be Pennsylvania, but it's one of those, like, oh, New Jersey. Okay, so yeah, it was one of those power, like, New Jersey is one of the best states for wrestling there is. Mm-hmm. As is like upstate New York and Pennsylvania and all the Midwest states. So anyways, he's got credentials. That was my point. He's good at just driving through, I should say, his double leg. He just drives right through it. He also loves his single leg, and he runs the pipe off of that. Something similar to like Daniel Cormier does. Randy Couture used to do it a lot. Very powerful when he gets on your hips to pick you up, slam you. Though he does waste his energy. I think he lifts sometimes, but he shouldn't have to. but good back control. Looks to advance when he's on the ground. He does have a little Andrew Sanchez in him where he wrestles himself to exhaustion, which you don't like. But even in fights he lost, like go back to the Brian Battle fight on the contender. I mean, on Tough. He had moments like he had Brian Battle mounted briefly in that fight. So he definitely showed signs. But his sole loss on the show was a submission to Brian Battle. I know he got knocked out by
Aaron Jeffrey.
Yeah. But like his loss to Brian Battle started when he started fading. So that's one thing he's really got to learn. As far as first of all, he doesn't have that many fights. So there's not like, I don't feel like you have a good grasp of his game. Like when you don't have a big sample size, everything you see in one fight gets like exaggerated. So I just want to say that. So like if he doesn't look anything like what I'm describing him, that's probably why. You know what I mean? Like if you eat at my house and my wife like makes you something you don't like, then you would say, "Oh, your wife's a bad cook." Like now you only had one meal that, you know. So kind of that's why I feel about this. Who is what I've seen, high output, throws a lot of combos, though he can be wild, like kind of swinging, looping kind of swinging guy. Loads up on everything. He does throw a nice body to the body left hook, which I like. Throws a lot of kicks, targets the calves, throws in some spinning attacks. Again, I wrote spinning attacks. I probably started one fight and I just threw it down there. But huge defensive holes, very hittable. He drops his hands, no movement at all. He's kind of very like stationary target. He was dropped by Rashad Coulter. As far as like the grappling goes, he likes to clinch and he likes to kind of grind in there. And he has a wrestling background that I haven't seen anything special about his background. I haven't seen anything in his wrestling game. And he faded in that fight against Josh Coulter. So as far as prediction goes, I am not that high on Petroski. I'm worried about him. I'm worried about his being one-dimensional. I'm worried about he looks like a guy to me that probably should still be on the regional scene, like polishing his things up. Like if he spent another year fighting in LFA, get 3-4 more fights in LFA, CES, something like good quality regional scene. Like I feel, and like fought in the Contender Series next summer. Like I feel
just the fact that he's in the UFC before Aaron Jeffrey should tell you a lot.
Yeah. In fairness, Aaron Jeffrey's had chances.
Yeah,
they've given him chances.
I'm surprised he hadn't made it yet, but anyway.
Yeah, but he will. He'll get that short notice fight one day. Chris Curtis style. Aaron Jeffrey kind of falls. Side note, he kind of falls in that Chris Curtis where like we've been hearing his name, especially connect the contenders, and he's not in. Yeah, he'll get the call soon. Anyways, like knowing that Petroski's a good wrestler, that's one area I know that he's good at. Like, I don't know who's good at. So I say Petroski getting a takedown. I'm assuming he's going to be the better wrestler. He gets a takedown. He likes to hit an arm choke. The classic wrestler move. I see him go to the head arm choke, and I say he gets him on there. I'll say second round.
All right. So that second round sub for Andre Petroski. We both have him by second round finish. And if anything different happens, we'll be as surprised as you are. Next up, featherweights take the cage as it is Makwan Amirkhani versus Lerone Murphy. Amirkhani, the 32-year-old Finn, is 16-6 overall. He's 6-4 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight losing streak right now, having dropped unanimous decisions to Edson Barboza and to Kamwela Kirk. That most recent one to Kirk was at UFC Fight Night, Rosenstrike versus Sakai this June. He's taking on Murphy, who steps in on fairly short notice for Tristan Connolly, and by all accounts presents a much stiffer challenge to Amirkhani, but nonetheless, 30-year-old Brit is 10-0-1 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 2-0-1 in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight win streak over Ricardo Ramos, who fights further up the card, and Douglas Silva de Andrade, whom he via unanimous decision at UFC on ESPN Chiesa versus Magny in January. The only blemish of any kind on his record was a draw against Zubaira Tukhugov back at UFC 242 in September of 2019. As I alluded a moment ago, Murphy is the favorite here. He is minus 300, in fact. Amirkhani plus 250 on the comeback. Keith, You said to me kind of between segments here that you're kind of slow in the roll on Amirkhani, kind of done with him. Are you feeling it for Lerone Murphy as a hot prospect, or are you thinking he's due to drop one soon? And how do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, well, getting a draw against Tukhugov right away makes me feel pretty good about you, because Tukhugov's good. I mean, we'll talk about him later on too. But so this is how I feel about both these fighters. I've settled with Amirkhani as a mid card guy. Like, that's who he is, and that's okay. Like, that's like, it's still one of the top 30, 40 fighters in the weight class in the entire world to be a mid-level card. I don't know about Murphy yet. That's where it is. Like, so even though it sounds like I'm insulting Amirkhani, like, being a like, this guy who's been mid-level. I mean, if we're being honest, Donald Cerrone for most of his career should have been like a mid-level. All right, maybe that's probably a bad example, but he's a little higher. But my point is, like, there was a ceiling. Like Jim Miller was like kind of a mid-level card. He had a hell of a career for himself. So Amirkhani, he's a southpaw. He's not really known for his striking, but to his credit, I think he has improved his striking over the years. Decent jab. He does keep his hands too low for my liking. I'm worried a little about his chin. I mean, he was dropped by Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza is one of the best strikers in the UFC, but Shane Burgos dropped him. He got dropped twice by Jason Knight, which is not a good look. But I like that he uses a lot of pressure. He stepping knees against Edson Barboza was really good. He's a relentless wrestler. Fast entries, but sometimes he shoots way too far away, and it's really obvious what he wants to do. Like, he doesn't disguise it. He doesn't really hide it behind his strikes. If he gets on top, good top control, good ground and pound. He is a submission threat. He likes like the head attacks. He likes the anacondas, darts, just like the front headlock series, that we'd like to call it. We'd call it in wrestling. But he tires himself out with his grappling. Like, he's a guy that will fade because he grapples so much. Murphy, like I said, Murphy's a little bit more of an unknown, because we haven't seen as much from Murphy as we've seen Amirkhani, but he's a technically sound striker. He can fight from both stances. He's pretty elusive. He uses a lot of feints, a lot of shoulder rolls, good lateral movement, good footwork. He fights behind a jab. I like that he doubles the jab. You can see this guy who spent a lot of time in the boxing room. Like, just little things he does. His shoulder rolls is a boxing thing. Doubling up jabs is a boxing thing. He's accurate. He throws hard to the body, another boxing thing. He can leave himself out of position as he overthrows punches. That's probably a guy who does too much bag work instead of sparring. But hard kicks to the body, likes low kicks, will occasionally look for a takedown. Like, he's not one-dimensional. He almost submitted Tukhugov in the fight with a guillotine. I mentioned the last time we talked about him. Though he doesn't have a submission in his career, which I don't like. But if he's on top, and this is actually a theme, there's a lot of guys on this card with, like, incredible ground and pound. Like, he's on there. I mean, he knocked out Ricardo Ramos with his ground and pound. A couple other guys on the card who has really good ground and pound. The guy in the main event, Glover Teixeira. Hazmat Shemaev is another guy that I'm thinking of who's on this card with really good ground and pound. He does need to improve his takedown defense a little bit. He couldn't get off the bottom when took him down. And he also gassed out in that fight pretty late. So this is a really tough matchup, because it comes down to me how much is, like, all right. So Amirkhani, I understand that he's settled in as like a mid-level card and middling talent, but his wrestling is good enough that if he can just out-wrestle you for 15 minutes, he'll win. And that just comes down to, like, how much is Murphy's takedown defense is an issue. I mean, he was taken down by Tukhugov a lot. Tukhugov's a better wrestler than Amirkhani. So in that fight, he still got a draw. I don't think he deserved. I thought Tukhugov won, but I was on the fence on this fight until I learned Amirkhani left SPG Ireland and opened up his own gym. I'm not high on SPG Ireland. I'm not saying like that was, the reason why he was somewhat successful in the UFC, but I still think training with those guys is better than training when nobody's in Finland. So add in that he looked really bad in his last fight against Kamala Kirk. I'm not sure when he opened up the gym. I just found out recently. But so I'll go with the unknown, and I'll go with Murphy, and I'll take him by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you here. There are a lot of things that kind of screamed potential upset to me about this one. And the first is just the straight stylistic matchup. Amirkhani is a very good wrestler. Murphy's most obvious hole in his game to this point is takedown defense and get up game. So that that spells a route to just a pretty straightforward decision. But I have to imagine that Murphy is drilling that. And if he's making even incremental improvements, while at the same time, Amirkhani has gone off to start his own gym. I mean, you and I have talked about this. The number of fighters who run their own gym or even just do the big fish, small pond thing where they're obviously like the best, they're the only top level pro in their gym and have made that work successfully is so short. It's almost non-existent.
I can just picture someone right now going, "Hey, you idiots! The guy fighting in the main event for the title does that." I'm like, yeah, but those are the outliers.
Yeah, they're outliers. You know,
it's like saying, yeah, chances are you're not going to be 40 years old and be one of the best NFL players. Oh, Tom Brady, yeah, that's the outlier. Like that's the exception.
Yeah,
Glover Teixeira is the exception.
Yeah, but and like there are always a few examples, like you say, the outliers, but generally speaking, it's rare. Like BJ Penn made it work for a while. Like, you know, he did the AKA and Nova União things really early in his career. Then he was basically the guy, but he's a generational talent. He made it work.
But BJ also wasn't like the head trainer. He was the guy that had the boxing model with the camp was centered around him. So George St. Pierre started doing similar things and stuff, and there's a couple of guys that's kind of happened more in MMA. But he wasn't like the leader of the gym. Like he was the face, but he wasn't. It was like even like Uriah Faber. He owns the gym, but he wasn't running the gym.
No, he always had coaches. Like even before Ludwig came along, you know. Yeah. With Amirkhani, I can't imagine he'll be sharper after a full camp of this. The Camwella Kirk fight, that's a difficult one for me to kind of shoehorn in here because that was low key one of the worst like judges robberies this year. Like for Kirk to one of the judges gave Kirk all 3 rounds. I give Amirkhani 2. Like but
it was still a bad showing from him. That was my point. Like
he looked flat.
To even have a fight be like close against Kirk is to me a bad showing.
Because his other losses in the UFC, Edson Barboza, Shane Burgos, Arnold Allen, that's just him losing to better fighters. Like losing to Camwella Kirk, even in a robbery, is like he looked flat, wasn't especially able to make his wrestling game go against Kirk, and got hurt a few times. So yeah, this looks like 2 escalators passing each other in opposite directions to me. Give me Lerone Murphy by decision, and you know, to the surprise of few, there's a reason he's a 3-1 favorite here. We now head to the light heavyweight division for a matchup between Shamil Gamzatov and Michal Oleksiejczuk. Gamzatov, the 31-year-old Dagestani, is a perfect 14-0 in his professional mixed martial arts career. He is 1-0 in the UFC, having taken a split decision over Klidson Abreu at UFC Fight Night Magomed Sharipov versus Cater. That was all the way back 2 years ago, though. So he is returning to action for the first time since November 2019. He'll be taking on Oleksiejczuk. The 26-year-old Poland native is 15-4 with 1 no contest overall. He is 3-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. Fought most recently back in March, taking a split decision over Modestas Bukauskas at UFC 260. That snapped a 2-fight losing streak for him against Jimmy Crute and Obent St. Preux, both losses by submission. Gamzatov is the slight favorite here. He is minus 142, where Oleksiejczuk is plus 120 or so as the slight underdog. Keith, who have you got in this one, and how high are you on Gamzatov? Another, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy, undefeated up-and-comer.
Yeah, I think he's like the ultimate one for that. Like he was on the PFL. And,
yeah, he did well in PFL.
I mean, what Russian wasn't on the PFL? But yeah, I think he's like the stereotype of this card of like, yeah, wow, remember that guy? And then Oleksiejczuk. So Oleksiejczuk, like, there's a lot of things I like about him. He's very aggressive on the feet, high output. Like he's gonna bring action. He's a pressure striker. He throws a lot of combinations. I should mention he's a southpaw. He loves his overhand left. He attacks the body. He probably attacks the body more than anybody in the UFC's light heavyweight division. He's got good power, and that's for a guy who's probably undersized for the weight class. He probably could go down a weight. he walks defensively, like he doesn't have a little. I don't know if he knows he can block punches. He just like kind of walks through. He just trusts his chin, like he wants to throw it down in the pocket. I would say he's not totally one dimensional, and what I mean by that, and a lot of people will probably disagree with me, like he can like sneak in a takedown. He's probably opportunistic, and I would say his defensive wrestling isn't terrible. But what is terrible is his grappling, like his submission defense. You take him down, he struggles to get back up. You take him down, there's a very good chance he gets submitted. I mean, he's terrible. I mean, he had 2 submission losses recently where, like, as soon as he got to the I'm trying to think, who was the guy? Which fight was it? It was yell at the TV. Jimmy Crute. That was like a yell at the TV moment. It was so bad. Now Gamzatov, you asked him like how much I like this guy. Like he's okay. Like I'm glad. I mean, if he was 12-2 instead of 14-0, like I wouldn't be as excited about him. Now I know we've talked about this past, of course, and that always happens. But he's flat-footed, though he uses a lot of feints. Well, I'll say this: like he's a limited athlete. Like I don't think he's a great athlete, but he's pretty technically sound. He uses feints well. He doesn't have the highest output. He's kind of slow. He can overreach on his strikes, but I like that he targets the body. I mean, this is a fight that both guys really target the body. He's got some good kicks, though. Hard kicks, likes deep kicks in the middle, and he's a good wrestler. Though I was surprised he was taken down by Cleaton Abreu. But he's a good grappler. He's got 4 submission wins in his career. As far as the prediction goes, I've always liked Oleksiejczuk's striking. He kind of was like one of my guys that I kind of liked, and it was like one of the sneaky guys. However, he's burned me too much, and his BJJ just sucks. Gamzatov didn't look good in his UFC debut, even though he got a win. I made a promise to not take Oleksiejczuk against anybody that has any kind of grappling game until he showed me that he can survive on the ground with someone who can grapple. So I hope, like, it's one of the ones I hope I'm wrong on my pick because I kind of want Oleksiejczuk to be good because of how exciting he is. I want him to be beyond exciting. Like, I want him to be in big fights with his exciting style. Like, he could be a Justin Gate, not the perfect example, but I'm just thinking of someone who could be like a really fun, crazy action. Oh, wow, Oleksiejczuk's going to fight. This fight's going to be nuts. Oh, no, Oleksiejczuk is taken down and gets submitted instead. So I'm hoping that moment comes, but I'm going to take Gamzatov. I'm going to take him by second round submission.
I think I've underestimated Oleksiejczuk a lot over the course of his, of his UFC career. Like I tend to pick against him, and part of it is that, as you pointed out, he comes off undersized. Well, I mean, he is undersized for the division just by the tape, the measuring tape, but just comes off undersized. Like he just, like most of your top 205ers are physical specimens of some kind or another. They're either like stocky, bricked up guys, or they're like 6-foot dudes with enormous wingspans where you don't understand how they even make 205. He is neither. He's one of the smaller looking guys in the division, but he has leveraged that by being able to be high output and aggressive, and probably, just more confident in his gas tank than, the Johnny Walkers or Ryan Spans of the world. Gamzatov, I'm still struggling to put together what he's really good at, because you're right. Like, he looks like an extremely strong guy, but he's not a plus athlete. Like, he's slow hands, slow feet, kind of plodding, low output striker.
Would you say he fit in perfect with the PFL?
This man was built.
Who's unforgettable with talent and like kind of fits every PFL roster member.
Yes, he's pure PFL. Yep. And you know what? If he just threw 40 pounds of fat on him and stuck him at heavyweight, he'd still be pure PFL. He'd just be a PFL heavyweight. Like, I still think there hasn't been a PFL final yet where I wasn't sure, like, Ray Sefo could just take either of the two guys that just fought. Like, 50-year-old Sefo, 50-year-old Sefo would have lamped the two guys that, like, fought, like, Capoloza and D'Elia last night.
He just writes the $1 million check to himself. He just said, "Hey, boys, Listen, I saved you from a beating. Just because of that.
I mean, if Gamzatov decides to leverage his wrestling, if he can get Oleksiejczuk down, I mean, you said it well. Oleksiejczuk has a bad ground game. I even though Gamzatov hasn't flashed like this incredibly intricate BJJ game or anything, if he gets on top of Oleksiejczuk, I assume he's just going to be able to work his way to a big man submission, like just an arm triangle choke, or just pound him until he gives up his back and then take the rear naked choke or something. But I think Oleksiejczuk is going to weather whatever Gamzatov throws back at him on offense. He's going to outland him badly. And unless Gamzatov does manage to get takedowns with enough time to work to either win the rounds or just finish the fight, I'm going with the slight underdog here. I'm going to pick Michal Oleksiejczuk just for fun. I mean, it's tempting to just say Oleksiejczuk does enough to win 2 rounds out of 3 and survives if and when it goes to the ground. But give me Oleksiejczuk by second round TKO. He just starts rolling downhill, stings him with something, bites off a desperation takedown, and finishes this thing. And the guy's still only 26. He's probably nowhere near his peak. Happy times. We now head to the welterweight division for a matchup between Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos and Benoit Saint-Denis. Dos Santos, the man who goes by Capoeira, 34-year-old Brazilian, 22-7 overall, 8-3 in the UFC. He has dropped 2 of his last 3, but those were to borderline contenders in Jingliang Li, who fights further up this card, and Muslim Salikov. Those sandwich around a win over Alexei Kunchenko. Before that, he had a 7-fight win streak in the UFC welterweight division, demonstrating just how hard it is to enter the UFC welterweight rankings from the outside. But he will look to turn it around against the debuting Saint-Denis. The 25-year-old Frenchman is 8-0 with 1 no contest overall. He is coming in off of a 4-fight win streak in Brave CF, which of course has become one of the top pipelines for talent to enter the UFC within the last year or two, especially those from France, Southern Europe, and the Middle East. Odds do favor Dos Santos to make it an unsuccessful debut for Saint-Denis. He is minus 220, Saint-Denis plus 180 on the comeback. Keith, tell me a little bit about Benoit Saint-Denis and tell me who you think wins this fight.
Yeah, so first of all, shout out to Mrs. Carlardi, who was my 9th grade French teacher. So if I say his name wrong, it's all Mrs. Carlardi's fault. By the way, Mrs. Carlardi was a pretty good-looking woman back in the day. I don't know how she looks anymore, but back in those days, she was the hot for teacher line. All I'm doing right now is I was scrolling through my notes and I couldn't find this fight, so I was killing dead air time. This is a fun fight. Like, this is a really a fight that I'm really intrigued from. It's a veteran fighter going against a good hot prospect, and I really don't know who's going to win. Like, I love this fight, and like, this is a really tough test in your UFC debut going against Alessio Zaleski dos Santos, who kind of was like this middling on the edge of being ranked like one of the best weight classes in the UFC, was always right there. Like, we're having our discussions in the Sherdog rankings. He was one of these guys that we toss his name out there as an option. Like, he's that good. Mm-hmm. And he's fun. He's got that capoeira style where he fights from both stances. He does a lot of spins, a lot of flying knees. He's exciting. But when he actually just sits back and just boxes or kickboxes, he's got some skills. Good power. Though he can overthrow his strikes. I said that last time. I want to throw it again. Can kind of chase the knockout. But when he sits back, straight punches down the pipe. Chin is a little bit of a concern to me because Lyman Good hurt him. Li Jingliang hurt him. Muslim Salikov hurt him. And like, I'm wondering if this like a sign and someone's going to put him out bad. But he can wrestle. He shows some good ground skills wrestling against Curtis Millender. I believe he's a Brazilian, just a black belt. I believe. I could be wrong about that. But he has a submission threat. Good top control. Now, move over to the Frenchman. Southpaw on the feet. He's pretty fast. I would say he's not the most technically sound, but he's a very good athlete who's good kicks. He does keep his chin a little too high for my liking. Like, he's going to get catch. He needs to clean that up. but in close is where I really like him. Judo background. I love his body lock game. So he has like the judo trips and all that, but also has like this Greco-Roman style wrestling to his game where he gets in the body lock, great hip control, great hip placement, stays heavy, like good at like just pinning up on a knee, breaking it down with his legs, physically strong, just pick him up. Slick back takes when it hits the ground. He's got 7 submission wins. If you shoot on him, he will like jump on a guillotine, jump on a Kimura. He'll try something like that and almost give up the takedown, but he gets right back up. Like he's quick to get back up. This is a really tough fight than a lot of people realize. I expect most people, I mean, by the betting odds, Zaleski's not a big favorite, but he's a favorite, and I think like the majority of people would take him. But I think Denis is a really good addition to the UFC roster. In fact, I'm picking him in an upset. I see him taking Dos Santos down. I don't think he gets the sub because of how slick Dos Santos. I was looking at his record, and he hasn't been submitted like forever. It was like I don't know what it was, like 2013 or something like that.
Yeah.
But to me, this is like a passing of the torch moment. Like this is a really, really tough test. But you beat Zaleski in UFC debut. Like welcome to UFC. You're getting tough fights from now on. And you know what? He came up on a good regional scene. I think he gets the win. I'll say he gets a decision. Give me and shout out to Mrs. Collardi again. What's up? I don't know if she's still around, but what's up, Mrs. Collardi?
The mysterious French-speaking lady with the Italian name. Get at us.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Man, I do love Saint Denis as a prospect, and coming through Brave CF, it's you. Anytime someone comes in undefeated or on a long win streak through a regional promotion, you're always have to be okay. Is this Aspera FC, or is this Brave CF? Like, is this the same promotion that is sending us Hamzat Chimaev and Ilya Tapuria? I mean, Elizeu dos Santos is going to be a step up from the people that Saint Denis has been beating in Bahrain. There's no question there, but it's not like a shocking step up. He beat Luan Santiago. That was what? Yeah, it was just earlier this year. Like that's a good fighter. I so want to pick the upset and just he comes in, announces himself on the UFC stage with a win over a guy that, I mean, if you and I counted down from the top of the welterweight division, I think he's probably around number like 18 to 20. Like he's not that far outside the top 15. He's losing to guys in Muslim Salikov and Jingliang Li that are either in or on the cusp of the top 15. But I can't pick it. Like Dos Santos is a guy that I underestimate. He's one of those guys that because he is a pretty exciting action fighter, I tend to underestimate and underrate his actual in-cage achievements. And yeah, I think he is going to be a little too much for Saint Denis on the feet. I'm picking Saint Denis not to be able to get him down, or at least not to be able to get him down easily, and to take some damage on the feet. Dos Santos is a physically powerful, like individual, explosive. His striking game is kind of full of surprises for people that haven't dealt with it before. You mentioned that outside of the capoeira stuff, where I mean, stance is almost irrelevant. Like when you're fighting in capoeira, I mean, we're talking about a guy that knocked out Sean Strickland with one of those like Tekken like wheel kicks. But when he just settles down to do more conventional kickboxing, he's surprisingly good at it. It's kind of like Michel Pereira that way. In fact, he's kind of like a decaffeinated version of Michel Pereira. Just not quite as wild, but the surprisingly good fundamentals on top of the exotic capoeira stuff. And I am going to pick him to win this one by decision, but wouldn't be too surprised to see it go the other way. I think the odds are about right on this one. Next up, it is a middleweight matchup between the debuting Albert Duraev and Roman Kopylov. Duraev, the 32-year-old Russian, is 14-3 overall. He is fresh off of a successful appearance on Dana White's Contender Series just back on September 14th, where he put away Caio Bittencourt with a painful-looking neck crank in the first round. That was his first fight in 3 years. He had taken quite a hiatus after walking away from Absolute Championship Berkut, now Absolute Championship Akhmat as a former 2-division champion. He'll be taking on Kopylov. The 30-year-old Russian is 8-1 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. Made his debut back in November of 2019, where he lost by third-round submission to Karl Roberson at the end of a pretty back-and-forth fight. Odds on this one, Duraev is one of the bigger favorites on the card. He's minus 320 right now. Kopylov plus 260. I'm excited to see Albert Duraev in the UFC. He's kind of the opposite of Allan Nascimento, where Nascimento lost on the Contender Series, disappeared for 3 years. Duraev disappeared for 3 years, then showed up on the Contender Series, put on a fantastic performance, and is making his UFC debut just 6 weeks later. He is a grappler. He comes from a Sambo background, and his boxing is functional at best. He definitely is on this end of the continuum where, yeah, I do Sambo and I do kickboxing, but I really want to get you on the ground and beat you up. Like he's more the early Fedor than the late Fedor. He's physically a complete brute, extremely strong guy. I don't know how he ever made welterweight, and in fact, I believe he had to drop the ACB welterweight title because he missed weight. But yeah, former 2-division champ. Yeah, former 2-division champ in a very good promotion. And I think the odds reflect the fact that he's a very, very good fighter, and that Kopylov's demonstrated weakness is, his defense on the ground. That spells bad news. I don't know whether this should be minus 320 and will probably swell as money comes in on Duraev, because all the hype reels are going to show him, twisting a man's head off on Contender Series 6 weeks ago. But I understand why. I think he's going to physically overpower Kopylov and get him on the ground. And he favors rear naked chokes and arm bars, and he's just going to bully Kopylov on the ground and probably get a first-round submission. Yeah, give me Albert Duraev by first-round submission. The clock is ticking on him. He's 32 years old, but not a whole lot of tread off the tires. So yeah, he'll be an interesting new factor in the middleweight division for as long as we have him.
Yeah. So Kopylov is one of those guys where it's, where you been? I forgot about you. Fits that theme of the show. He looked terrible in his UFC debut, and this is the guy that, like, not to Duraev's type excitement, but a guy that people were looking forward to coming into the UFC. And so he's a southpaw. I'd say his striking is pretty fast. He does well to kind of hit and move. Nice jab. He does have the tendency to throw one strike at a time, which you don't like. He also constantly dips to the same side. Like, I don't know how someone hasn't picked it up yet, and like throws a high kick to that side, and they're gonna knock him out. He doesn't check leg kicks too. Carl Robinson was just murdering with leg kicks. He is a good wrestler, some fast injuries, but his sub game, he has no subs on his record, I believe. And he gets subbed by Carl Robinson, which is really bad considering Carl Robinson's a kickboxer. I would say Carl Robinson has underrated grappling, but it's still like, definitely not the strength of his game. He's not known for his grappling. Now, Duraev, you mentioned it. We talked about who was it? Oh, it was you just mentioned like Nascimento. Nascimento enters with some good experience in his UFC debut. Duraev's in the same situation where he's got some, really, really good experience. You mentioned two-weight champion in ACB. On the feet, very boxing style. I think you said functional boxing. Like, I agree with that. He's open to leg kicks. Like, it was short before he got a takedown, but in the Contender Series fight, like, Bancourt was having some success trying to kick out his legs. But he's a great wrestler. You mentioned fast entries, smothering top game, passes to better position on the top, which you always like. Busy ground and pound, really good at getting that Dagestani handcuff, looking for the crucifix. And he's got 9 submission wins on his career. I'm not as confident as you are. I think this fight is closer than the odds show, but I'm with you. Like, I favor Duraev too. He looks fantastic on the ground. The last time we saw Kopylov on the ground, he was getting submitted by Carl Robertson. I'm not going to go as early as you are. I'm going to say to go a little later, but give me Duraev. I'll say 3rd round submission.
There you go. 2 picks for Duraev to make a successful UFC debut and announce his presence to the 185-pound division. The second to last prelim on the UFC 267 undercard is a featherweight matchup between Ricardo Ramos and Zubaira Tukhugov. Ramos, the man who goes by Carcassinha, and my Brazilian fighter nickname database tells me that that is a kind of like bread roll that they eat in Brazil. So he's nicknamed after like some sort of little dinner roll.
So shout out to Denis Sweetbread Paiva.
Yeah.
he's a Denis Paiva of Brazil.
Apparently. He is 26 years old, 15-3 overall, 6-2 in the UFC. Fought most recently back in May, taking a unanimous decision over Bill Aljo. That allowed him to turn things back around after a first-round TKO loss to Lerone Murphy last July. He'll be taking on Tukhugov, the 30-year-old Chechnyan, is 19-5-1 overall. He's 4-2-1 in the UFC. Most recently fought last September, dropping a split decision to Hakeem Dawodu at UFC 253. Tukhugov, the slight favorite here. He's -160. Ramos is +140 on the comeback. These guys were actually supposed to fight back in March. Tukhugov withdrew with an injury. It was pushed back to now. It was pushed back far enough that Ramos got the Aljo fight in between. So he's had a whole other 3 rounds of work, a whole other paycheck, whole other win bonus while Tukhugov was getting better. Man, Zubaira Tukhugov, this man 5 years ago, say mid to late 2016, even though he had just lost to Renato Moicano, like his first UFC loss, he was one of the strongest up-and-coming featherweight prospects / borderline contenders in the entire organization. He looked great in winning his first 3 fights. He'd come out of good promotions. The Moicano was, his stock was very high at the moment, so losing a really close fight to him didn't hurt Tukhugov badly at all. And what a difference 5 years makes. Since then, Tukhugov, I called him in my column this week. He's a walking bingo card of bad MMA news. He has 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw, 1 positive PED test failure that got him a 2-year suspension, 1 egregious weight miss. He missed weight for the Dawodu fight by 5 pounds. And the most significant strike he's landed in the last 5 years was on a night he didn't have a fight, when he ran into the cage and sucker punched Conor McGregor after the Nurmagomedov fight. It's been a bad run of years for Tukhugov. He has the chance to turn it around here. They've booked this fight twice now. So not only is Tukhugov still on roster, he's still on roster, and they are still finding him winnable fights. They've not cut bait on this guy yet. He has not reached the threshold of more trouble than he's worth. But I certainly think this is a crossroads moment for Tukhugov in particular, because I think Ricardo Ramos is what he is. I think he's a fun fighter to watch, a good gatekeeper to the top 15, who might peek his way in there once or twice, but probably not a title contender type. I thought Tukhugov had title contender upside 5 years ago, and he's still only 30 years old. He just has a lot of stuff he needs to turn around. It starts with making weight this week. If he doesn't make weight this week, his leash is going to get really short. I've made the point both on our previews and our recaps. The UFC has more patience with losing than missing weight. They have more patience with hitting your wife than missing weight. Like, missing weight fucks up their plans, so that's what they come down like a hammer on. Tukhugov needs to make weight. He needs to beat Ramos. He needs to do it preferably in convincing fashion, in a fashion that says, okay, you can't give me these borderline guys anymore. I'm back. And I think this is a fight kind of cut out for him to do it. He's a guy, and obviously I'm going to keep coming back to this since we're talking about a fight card that it feels like it has 10 Russians on it, but he's on that continuum where, obviously he is one of Khabib's wingmen, but he comes from the same basic background, the same basic skill set, but he leverages it in an opposite direction. He prefers to strike and can wrestle. He prefers to strike and can use his sambo background, his core strength and balance to keep it standing. He is a sprawl and brawler by preference, and good power. You'll give me the X's and O's, better than I will there, and tends to be a pretty fast and aggressive starter. I think that spells bad news for Ramos. I think, even though I don't think Tukhugov is 10 times better than Ramos, I think it's going to kind of look that way because of how it starts out. I think he's going to come out hot, hit him with stuff early, and probably get a TKO in the first round.
Yeah. So every time I think of Tukhugov, I always think of the double standard of when the UFC kicked out Paul Daly from the UFC for sucker punching Josh Koch, which rightfully so.
Sure.
And then Tukhugov, I don't know if we should count what assaults are worse, but like sneaking in from a guy who's not. This one was worse.
Dude, punching the guy that you just finished fighting with. I mean, it's still bad, but it's
It happens. Yeah, sneaking up on a guy who just fought the baddest dude on the planet for like 20 minutes is worse. Who, by the way, was
sitting. He was sitting.
Yeah,
like Conor was sitting against the cage, and Tukhugov just ran in and punched him in the face. It was terrible.
And honestly, a lot of people didn't make him as big of a deal on what Tukhugov did to Conor because it was Conor. If if that was Dustin Poirier or Frankie Edgar or fill in Robert Whittaker, fill in like good guy everyone likes, I think people would have a bigger issue. Mind you, if it was those guys, this probably wouldn't have happened. But yeah, anyways, we don't need to go down that slope. So anyways, first Tukhugov, he's well rounded. He's got a very his game. He's got a good game. Like you're right. You said all the things he's done that were kind of unrelated to fighting. Like he's a headache. But there's a reason why the UFC is still dealing with a headache, because he's freaking good. He's got a very nice slip and rip style to his striking. He makes a mistake of dropping his hands and just throw from his hips a little bit, but he's got a nice up jab, a lot of variety in his attacks, a lot of different combinations. You never really know where he's going. His left hook is his best strike. He kind of just whips it, puts a lot of power into it. I'd say a good power, not like the earth-shattering power, but like upper half of the division. He's a very, very good wrestler, though. Drives through his hips, cuts corners well, chain wrestles takedowns together. He's got your Team Khabib style, Eagles MMA smothering top control, good ground and pound. The one thing, though, we've seen him fade late in fights. Ramos, very athletic. He's a Muay Thai striker. He makes the Muay Thai striking mistakes by keeping his chin really high, standing up tall. He's also tall for the division anyways. And he has surprisingly low output. He throws a lot of single strikes, but his kicking games are really fun. Great dexterity in his kicks where he just can throw it up to the head really fast. He loves the question mark kick. I've always had issues with the question mark kick. They're fun, but none of it's very effective. They don't knock guys out, but they can score points and they're fun. Well, he loves spinning attacks. I mean, go back to his KO of Ayman Zahabi. He uses his length, but it's funny because all I talk about is striking. His grappling is the better part of his game. And it's funny because for the long time of his career, I thought of him as a striker. But he uses his length really well in the clinch. Just gets in there, likes to wearing guys. Good slide bys from there. Body lock takedowns is his thing. I would say not a great offensive wrestler, but like an underrated offensive and a very underrated grappler. Good top game, good submission threat. He uses his legs really well to kind of get you back, body lock you, hang on you, just using those long legs. But the one thing I don't like about his jiu-jitsu is he plays BJJ off the back if he's taken down, doesn't show the urgency to try to get back to his feet. So as far as prediction goes, this is a fun fight. I think we're going to have some fun scrambles in this fight because I think I'm higher on Ramos's game than you are when it comes to his grappling. But my issue thing is I expect to see some fun grappling and Ramos throwing up submissions, but mostly throwing up submissions from his back. with Tukhugov having a lot more top control. So I'm with you. I'm going with Tukhugov. I'll take Tukhugov by decision.
The UFC 267 prelims close out with a high-stakes clash between ranked strawweights. It is Amanda Ribas and Virna Jandiroba. Ribas, the 28-year-old Brazilian, is 10-2 overall. She's 4-1 in the UFC and will be looking to turn things around after her first UFC loss. She faced Marina Rodriguez at UFC 257 back in January, won a fairly dominant first round on the ground, then just moments into the second round, got knocked out by an elbow and some follow-up strikes. That put the Skids on a 4-fight win streak with which she had opened her UFC career. Those wins coming over Emily Whitmire, Mackenzie Dern, Randa Marcos, and Paige Van Zandt. She's taking on Jandiroba. The 33-year-old Brazilian goes by Carcará. My Brazilian fighter nickname database will tell you that that is a species of hawk or falcon that is native to South America. So there you go. She is the hawk, the falcon, kind of a cool nickname. At any rate.
I think you said hog or falcon. Like, how can it be a hog or a falcon? Okay, so a hawk. Okay, gotcha. So a badass bird. Okay, cool.
Just when you go to a Brazilian steakhouse, don't ask what's on that little spit. Just eat it. That's all I'm going to say. It might be like the hog falcon. All right, Jandiroba, 17-2 overall. 3-2 since joining the UFC as a former Invicta standout. She has lost to Carla Esparza and Mackenzie Dern. She has defeated Mallory Martin, Felice Herrig, and most recently back in June at UFC on ESPN, Korean Zombie versus Ige, she beat Kanako Murata when Murata was unable to continue after hurting her arm in the second round. Odds on this one are close, but Ribas is the slight favorite. She is minus 160 or so, where Jandiroba is floating around about 140 as the underdog. Keith, who have you got in this one?
This is a good fight. This is a fight that I'm really looking forward to. Actually, it's one of the fights I wish they weren't matched against each other because I don't really want to see either one. They both need a win bad, so I don't really want to see either one of the girls who I like lose. So I'll start with Ribas. The first thing that stands out to me about Ribas is how athletic she is. She's well-rounded. She's a high-output striker, good footwork, light on her feet, really good fluidity. She flows really well out there. She's fast. She's accurate. She's very good at keeping her distance and landing punches at the end of the strike. A perfect example is the Mackenzie Dern fight. She'll throw in a spinning back kick, which I don't like, but she got a judo background, so she's hard to take down. Good hip throws, good body control, good body locks herself. She's strong. I'll mention she's big for the weight class. She struggles to make the weight because of how big she is. It's going to be someone who's going to be forced to move up. But heavy top pressure. What I like about her on the ground, she works to look for a better position, and she's a submission threat. And I really think her grappling is really overrated because you go back to the Mackenzie Dern fight. She had moments in the fight where she was actually grappling with Mackenzie Dern, who, anybody who listens to this show knows how good of a submission grappler Mackenzie Dern is. And she's great off her back. She can get some submissions off her back. And if she's on top, some violent, her violent ground and pound is like the complete opposite of her personality. She has this big, bubbly personality. Like, she has a mean ground and pound. Now move over to Jandiroba. Jandiroba is so the great thing about, let me back up. The great thing about Amanda Ribas' game is how well-rounded she is. Jandiroba is the complete opposite. She's a specialist, but she's really good at that specialty. She's extremely one-dimensional. Her striking is almost non-existent. She throws one strike at a time. It's mostly an arm punch, doesn't have a lot of power, but she uses it enough to distract so she can close the distance, follow it up with some takedowns, where she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And not all Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts are equal. Just throw it out there. There's levels. She's on the very top of it. She's one step below Mackenzie Dern. And in fairness, she's a much different style to Mackenzie Dern. She's more of a smother you, top control, light position of submission, and then slowly work in a submission when it's there, like a Kimura or something. She's going to work. She's not quick like Mackenzie Dern pulling an armbar anywhere. I've seen a lot of people taking Jandiroba in an upset, and I can see why. Her ground game is that good. If she gets fights to the ground, while I'm so high in Ribas, and I just talked about how good of a grappling was against Mackenzie Dern, if you put her on her back where, she's not going to be able to shrimp up because of the top pressure from Jandiroba, Easy to see Jandiroba win this, but I'm gonna go with the favorite, and I'm gonna take Ribas simply because I really like her striking. Like I know she lost the last fight. She was winning until she got caught. She was doing extremely well, and I'm gonna take her last loss more as a fluke. I think she's gonna have to stick and move. She's gonna have to make sure she's on her bike the whole time. She's gonna have to make sure she doesn't get backed up to the cage, that outer perimeter. She's gonna have to stay, and that's really tough. But I've seen her do it before, and I've seen her. She's gonna have a big speed advantage, and she's gonna have to stop an early flurry of takedowns. She can maybe she can tire out Jandiroba by maybe stopping some takedowns, or just like get into the clinch and kind of grinding it out a little bit and not giving up the takedown. But then when they're got space, I just see a piecing her up. So give me Ribas by decision.
Yeah, I love this fight, except for the fact that one of them is going to lose and take a step back. I totally feel that way about this fight, and I felt that way about Ribas versus Rodriguez as well. Obviously, the Rodriguez fight, Ribas was doing great in the first round. She was, dominating her on the ground. Then just, hey, she got caught, and that's fine. I mean, that's going to happen in MMA from time to time. It may happen to Amanda Ribas again at some point, but that's not a route to victory that is going to be replicable for Virna Jandiroba. That is not what she does. Virna Jandiroba by knockout on the feet, I'll give you whatever odds you want. I think Jandiroba is probably going to hit her ceiling here pretty soon if she hasn't hit it already. Simply because as good a grappler as she is, just kind of as airtight, and she's a heavy top position grappler for someone who herself is not that heavy. Like, unlike Ribas, she's not big for the division. She came to the UFC to me looking like someone who probably could have made atom weight. Just, not super tall, and she's got muscles, but like not a broad-shouldered, burly woman. So even if the fight goes to the ground, I don't think it's just automatic airtight lockdown that Jandiroba wins the rest of that round. Like, Ribas is dangerous on the ground. Like, both these women have fought Mackenzie Dern, who is the biggest strawweight in the UFC and one of the 2 or 3 best women ever to grapple. Like, they've both been through that acid test, and both survived. I expect Ribas to win this one. I understand why she's the favorite. Should be a great fight. The dynamic is very obvious. Ribas can win on the ground, but on the feet she has an enormous advantage, so why not try to keep it there? Whereas Jandiroba needs to get this to the ground at all costs, or she's just going to get pieced up all night by a taller, faster, harder-hitting woman. I'm picking that to happen, so give me Ribas by decision. But yeah, this should be a great fight, and again, that this is on the prelims, and deservedly so, because the main card is so stacked, is just an indication of what a good night of fights we're probably in for.
Yeah, as we already mentioned, like, this fight could easily be like UFC headlining for a weaker fight night card.
Yep, absolutely. It could have headlined at least one of the fight night cards we've already had this month, for sure. The UFC 267 main card kicks off with a 205-pound matchup between Magomed Ankalaev and Volkan Oezdemir. Ankalaev, the 29-year-old Dagestani, is 14-1 overall. He is 6-1 in the UFC. He dropped his UFC debut to Paul Craig via triangle choke submission with literally 1 second left in a fight in which he had been utterly dominant. He bounced back from that setback with 6 straight wins over Marcin Prachnio, Klidson Abreu, Dalcha Lungiambula, 2 in a row over Ioan Kudalaba, and most recently, back in February, a unanimous decision over Nikita Krylov. He'll be taking on Oezdemir. The 32-year-old Switzerland native is 17-5 overall. He is 5-4 in the UFC. He lost his most recent outing last July via second round KO to Yuri Prohaska. That was at UFC 251. That put the brakes on a 2-fight win streak for him over Alexander Rakic and Ilir Latifi. He, of course, had a shot at the UFC light heavyweight title then held by Daniel Cormier all the way back in January of 2018, but it has been mixed results for him ever since. Ankalaev, a strong favorite here. He is approaching minus 300. Uzdemir approaching plus 250 as the underdog. Keith, we were talking earlier on this card about Shamil Gamzatov and how he's an undefeated prospect, undefeated in the UFC, and it just kind of sneaks up on you because he's been away for a while and like there was never that much buzz. He didn't do anything that just seized your attention. You can't say that about Magomed Ankalaev. I mean, feel like we've all had our eye on him since the beginning, and the guy has, I mean, you can make an argument that he's won all but 5 seconds of his UFC tenure so far. Do you still see like a title level ceiling on this guy? And how do you think this fight goes tonight? Or sorry, this weekend?
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. We did it before on the recap show. We're both extremely high on this guy. I mean, what's it not to like for him? First of all, he's big for the weight class. Like, he looks like a huge dude. He's well-rounded. Southpaw, who's a technically sound striker. He needs to tuck his chin. He keeps his chin a little high from my liking, but he works behind a really crisp jab, beautiful leg kicks, push kick, great high kick. I mean, you go back to, like, he was just throwing nonstop high kicks at Ian Kuchalaba that weren't missing. He can just muscle his opponents against the fence. His clinch game is really strong. He has a height advantage where he just gets in there and weighs on guys. Uses head control really well to just kind of frustrate. He'll drop down on the hips, smothering top game. I like that he isolates a limb and then just beats you up, and got really good takedown defense if you try to take him down. Now move over to his opponent, Uzdemir. It's funny that so many people are counting this guy out. This guy challenged for the title before. He's aggressive. He's a bit flat-footed. He's not a great athlete. He's a little slow. He keeps his hands low, but he's got a boxing style. He's got big power in both hands. Like, that's what stands out for Uzdemir. His left hook is great. His right hand is earth-shattering. I love his inside game too. Like, when he gets inside the clinch, brutal clinch striking. He can just grind in there. He's got a little bit of a dirt dog in him that he doesn't get enough credit for. But he'll actually wrestle. He'll sneak in a takedown, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. If he's on top, solid top control, but weak get-up game. As far as the prediction goes, I can't see Uzdemir winning this. After I just said all these nice things that, like, people are counting out, I can't see Uzdemir winning this fight other than landing a big shot. Based on what he packs in his punches, he's got a better shot than people think. To land it, he's got a better shot than most people do of landing one big shot. But I think Ankalaev works from range, has a speed advantage, and then I think he just realized he should get the fight to the ground, takes him down to the ground, beats him up on the ground until he gets the finish. Give me Ankalaev by third round TKO. From ground and pound.
Yeah, I'm with you here. Like, Ankalaev, again, just earmarked for future greatness and near future at that. I mean, the time is now. You and I have been doing these recap shows for long enough that we've talked about him after both Kutalaba fights, after the Krylov fight, and after the second Kutalaba fight. I remember us saying, well, okay, now he's proven borderline top 15 guys don't belong in the cage with him. It's time to move on to the next thing. Then after the Krylov fight, we're like, okay, those 10 to 15 guys, it's like no more of that. We need him against one of the top 6 or 7 guys in the division. Just to stop wasting his time, basically. And he's getting that in Uzdemir. I do agree with you that Uzdemir presents risks. You pointed out that Ankalaev doesn't tuck his chin as well as he might. He seems to trust his head movements and the fact that he has height and reach on most other UFC light heavyweights to kind of keep his chin out of danger. It wouldn't take much for Volkan Uzdemir to test that. He's very aggressive. As you said, he has fight-ending power in both hands. But the thing about Ankalaev is he made the mental mistake against Craig, but aside from that, he's been better than everyone everywhere. He's outstruck the strikers. He's been a better wrestler than the wrestlers. Just complete dominance. And I think he's trending one way while Uzdemir is headed the other. In some ways, I think losing the Craig fight was the best thing that could have happened to Magomed Ankalaev, because he might have been fighting a top 5 guy 2 or 3 fights ago if he had just wiped the floor with Craig, or finished wiping the floor with Craig. He was almost done. But Oezdemir, I agree with you. Like, Ankalaev will probably strike with him for a while, but when he wants to get it to the ground, I think he'll be able to. He's going to be a lot bigger than Oezdemir. Oezdemir looks like a huge guy in isolation because he's hulking. His neck is the size of Brock Lesnar's, and he just has like real thick chest and shoulders. But Ankalaev is going to be taller. He's going to be broader. He's going to have greater reach. And I think he's going to be the physically stronger guy if and when they clinch. I think Ankalaev will be able to bring this fight to the ground when he wants to. And then it'll be a choose your poison thing. He has nasty ground and pound, and he may just pound Oezdemir out, or may just pound Oezdemir until he gives up his back and he ends up getting his first UFC submission. Did you say third round? Yeah. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and say Ankalaev gets this done in the second round. And yeah, let's be sassy. Let's say he gets his first UFC submission, just a club and sub type thing. Next up, it is a welterweight contest between Jingliang Li and Khamzat Chimaev. Li, the 33-year-old Chinese fighter, is 18-6 overall. He is 10-4 in the UFC. Hard to believe it is his 15th UFC fight. At any rate, he is coming off a first-round knockout of Santiago Ponzinibbio at UFC on ABC Holloway versus Kattar back in January. That turned things around for him after his unanimous decision loss to Neil Magny last year at UFC 248. He is welcoming back Chimaev, man who goes by Boris, and my Russian nickname decoder tells me that means wolf, is 27-year-old Chechen by way of Sweden, perfect 9-0 in his career, a perfect 3-0 in the UFC, but you know that already because Khamzat Chimaev was essentially the UFC's breakout star of last year, the breakout star of the post-COVID era, the man who stepped up, seized the opportunity, came out of Brave CF before we knew that was going to become a thing, and finished John Phillips, Reese McKee, and Gerald Meerschaert in the space of about 2 months. His 10-day turnaround between the Phillips and McKee wins still stands as the shortest turnaround between UFC wins in the modern era. Of course, the record for appearances has been shortened to 7 days by Lupita Godinez, but she lost the second one. So Chimaev still has that record. The Phillips and McKee wins, over borderline to middling UFC talents. But his 17-second KO of Gerald Meerschaert at UFC Fight Night Covington versus Woodley last September certainly opened some eyes, as Meerschaert is a wily, tough as nails, sometime borderline middleweight contender, and Chimaev put him away in seconds. Then Chimaev came down with COVID, and he came down with a sufficiently severe case of COVID that he actually, for a time, announced his retirement. Probably out of a combination of discouragement over his symptoms and frustration with the UFC's apparent pressure, like kind of back channel pressure for him to come back before he was ready. But whatever the case, he retired, he unretired. It is 13 months later, and he is back. And the odds makers, at least, believe it will be as though he never left, as he is minus 550, which is, as we speak, neck and neck with a fight we'll be talking about in a few minutes for the biggest favorite on the card. Lee is available at plus 425 as the underdog. Keith, obviously I'm going to ask for your prediction on the fight, but you are somebody who is high on Chimaev, and all of us are to some extent or another. He's at least proven that he definitely belongs here. But as someone who's, you're definitely on the Chimaev train, what do you want to see out of him this Saturday? Like, what would make you feel good? Like, okay, Chimaev is back and we're back to business.
Smash everybody. That's what he does, right? He just smashes everybody, right?
Yep.
So I've been the guy that's saying, and I think I'm the only guy in the world saying this, that the UFC did not market Chimaev right. Like he's a star. He has a star quality to him. And I was saying I was pushing hard for the Nick Diaz fight. Like if you're getting Nick Diaz, use Nick Diaz to get up the next star. That said, like Li Jingliang was a much more competitive fight, like much more test and really know who you have in Shemaev. So like I get that. Like I understand like record wise and talent wise, like Li Jingliang is a very, very good fight. So like Shemaev wins, especially if he wins impressively, like this he's off and running. I mean, he's got to be ranked in our rankings well, I mean, welterweight's really hard, so I shouldn't say he's going to be ranked. But if he smashes him, he's going to be ranked. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want me to give my prediction now, but
yeah, please.
Okay, so we'll start with Shemaev. What does he do? What does he do well? Everything. So he's really. All right, let me think for a second. He's well rounded. Though we haven't seen him blended together, he's either like striking or grappling so far in the UFC. But what I love about him is just his pressure. Pressure ready to go. He's got this like oozing confidence in him where he's almost fearless. He comes right at his opponent. The second the referee says go, he's right on there. Like he almost runs across the cage on him. We saw against Joe Mersha just massive power and accuracy too. Like he this little feint with his left hand, came over the top of the right hand, just little short shot, put Jared Mearshot in another dimension, which is we can say Jared Mearshot is a tough out for anybody. He's very physically strong. I'm talking about obviously I was talking about his power punching, but I mean just like his physique and his strength. Like he doesn't look like he doesn't have a ripped up body, but when you see like Reese McKee is very low level UFC talent, but he just picked up Reese McKee like with by one leg, just walks him across the cage like he was like a little toddler, like a mom in the store picking up their toddler as they're walking him out the store. He's an incredible wrestler, blazing fast entries. If you stop his takedown, he just wrestles takedowns together until he gets the position he wants. Incredible top control. He's got that Dagestani handcuff thing where he just looks for one part of the body, controls that. He advances position. The way he was just easily moving him out on his opponents. Maybe the meanest ground and pound in the game. And that's like trying to be as respectful as I can to a guy like Glover Teixeira, who's in the main event. But he gets on top, just unloads an arsenal of just crushing ground and pound. He's got a sub game. He's got 3 submission wins in his career. But I talked about his striking, his power. I talked about his grappling, his wrestling. I talked about his pressure. Like they're all great things, but I actually don't think that's the best part of his game. I think the best part of the game is his athleticism. Like he just looks like a special athlete out there. My only concern heading into this, well, obviously one is a big step up in competition. Is he smoke and mirrors? But like, well, I shouldn't say this. Everyone's saying it's a step up in competition, but like, is it a big step up in competition from Jared Mearshot? Like, it might be a step up in competition, but is it like everyone's making it sound like, oh, such a huge, he finally gets a test. Like, Jared Mearshot's freaking good, and he knocked him out in like 15 seconds. But my only concern is COVID. Like, how much of a hit did COVID have on him? Not to get political or anything, but we know some people die from COVID. Like, sure, the people dying, elite athletes. I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but like an elite athlete has a better chance of recovering. I should say.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But it's still concerned. People die. So
yeah.
Like, as far as Li Jingliang, I said his last fight that I really didn't know what to take from him because he was so inconsistent. I said he looked incredible against Zaleski dos Santos. He looked incredible against Santiago. But he looked great against dos Santos. Then looked terrible against Neil Magny. And then his next fight, he goes against Santiago Ponzinibbio and probably had the best performance of his career. So I'm like, I'm settled. He's just good. And I think like looking really bad against Neil Magny is just that he struggled with the size of Neil Magny, the length of Magny, the IQ of Neil Magny, and ultimately like the pressure of Neil Magny, which is kind of getting to where I get with Shemaev. But like that's what Neil Magny does. As far as the X's and O's on him, he's a serviceable striker. Or I think you'd call it a functional striker. Does well, more of a boxing style, a lot of hooks, good head movement. He hits hard. Good leg. I shouldn't say more boxing. He throws a lot of leg kicks too, but underrated offensive wrestler, but very weak defense wrestler. I think he's one of the weakest part of his game. Neil Magny took him down very easily. Jake Matthews took him down very easily. And in all respects, actually both Jake Matthews and Neil Magny are very good wrestlers, especially Magny. Magny's a very underrated wrestler, especially offensively.
Yeah.
Neither one of them is Chimaev's level wrestling. But Li Jingliang has shown that he can go hard into fights, deep into fights. So what is my prediction for this fight? I'm going to predict Chimaev does what Chimaev does. And he smashes. So Chimaev by smash. First round.
Yeah, there you go. My primary, my first concern with Chimaev will be on Friday rather than Saturday. So will probably already have happened or not happened by the time you're watching this. You know, how will he look on the scale? Because we're talking about a guy that has expressed his willingness to fight at 170 as well as 185. Here he'll be dropping all the way down to the lower of the two weight classes in which he likes to perform, and off of a year off in which, you know, he's gotten a year older. He has battled with COVID. And remember that obviously there were several factors that led to him announcing his retirement. You know, we know now that there was like constant back channel pressure for him to come back on the UFC schedule rather than his own, plus the illness itself. But what he actually said, the proximate cause was, I can't work out. Like I go to the gym and I'm immediately exhausted, like my body's not working. Look no further than Aspen Ladd a couple weeks ago to see what it's like to come back from a year away, during which the cause of that absence was something that stops you from being able to do cardio and road work, to know that, hey, the first challenge is going to be him weighing at 171 on the scale and still having enough Khamzat Chimaev in his body to get the job done against Lee. Assuming he is not permanently or indefinitely compromised by COVID, assuming the weight cut is a normal one for him, yeah, Lee is a dangerous opponent, but generally speaking, a showcase fight for him. I agree with you. Like my logical half of my brain says that trying to put him in a fight with Leon Edwards, a plus, or, you know, a top 3 welterweight at the time when he had not even beaten a top 50 welterweight, you know, but had beaten maybe like a top 20 middleweight, seemed ridiculous. But then by the eyeball test, it seemed like the logical next step. He is just very obviously a special athlete. And the way he destroyed Meerschaert, when most of us analyst pundit types were saying this would be an appropriate next test, and then he just made it look silly, reminds me of John Jones on the way up, where just everything that was supposed to be the logical next step, he just blew straight through it. So even though I'm looking at the ways that Lee might be able to present some challenges to him, we still haven't seen Chimaev really hit cleanly. We haven't seen Chimaev have to deal with somebody who was able to fight off his first takedown attempt. I think he's going to be fine physically, and I think he's going to have continued to progress. The guy is still just 27 years old. You know, how long has he even been a pro? He's been a pro for like 3 years. You know, we talk about how Surreal Gone, you know, look at all the things he did in, you know, just the first 3 years after he turned pro. Chimaev is on that same kind of time schedule. I think he's going to blow through Li Jingliang. If there's a flaw to Lee, it's that he's not a slow starter in the sense that he's not aggressive in the first round, but he's vulnerable, especially in the first part of the first round of his fights. Magny beat him in the first round. David Zavada had him in trouble in the first round. He looked fantastic against Ponzinibbio because Ponzinibbio was super gun shy, uncharacteristically for himself, because, you know, Ponzinibbio was usually pathologically aggressive. Ponzinibbio was really trigger shy in that fight, which allowed Jingliang Li to get the range, get the rhythm on his own time schedule, and then just put him away. If there's one thing that I'm pretty sure Chimaev is going to do, it's that he's going to test Lee within the first 15 seconds of this fight. And that makes a lot of the other matchup intricacies moot, because I don't think Lee's getting out of the first round of this fight. I think Chimaev, just with his blinding, sneaky hand speed, is going to sting him with something on the feet, hurt him bad, dump him on the ground, and either pound him out or choke him out. But give me Khamzat Chimaev by first round KO.
By smash.
By smash. Smish. Yep. Next up at UFC 267 is a matchup that makes me say, if you are not a Dan Hooker fan, what the hell is wrong with you? That's all I can say. Like, go get your mind right. Islam Makhachev takes on Dan Hooker in a pivotal 155-pound contest. Makhachev, the 30-year-old Dagestani, also an Eagles MMA, School of Nurmagomedov guy. He is a sterling 20-1 overall. He is 9-1 in the UFC. Got one punch knocked out by Adriano Martins all the way back in 2015, and he has strung together 8 straight wins over increasingly stern opposition ever since. Chris Wade, Nick Lentz, Gleison Tebow, Caden Johnson, Arman Sarukian, Davi Ramos, Drew Dober, and most recently in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 26 back in July, Thiago Moises, whom he choked out in the 4th round after putting on a fight that was pretty exciting for as one-sided as it was, is how I'd put that. At any rate, he brings an 8-fight win streak into the cage against Hooker, who steps up on short notice for Rafael dos Anjos, who was forced to bow out. Hooker, the 31-year-old New Zealand native, is 21-10 overall. He's 11-6 in the UFC. Significantly, he started out at featherweight, which I don't know how he did that. But at any rate, he's 8-3 since moving up to lightweight. Fought most recently in September at UFC 266, where he took a unanimous decision over Nasrat Hakparast. That started the comeback from the first back-to-back losses of his UFC run. He lost to Michael Chandler in what ended up being a title eliminator at UFC 257. Prior to that, he dropped a unanimous decision to Dustin Poirier in an extremely close main event at UFC on ESPN 12 last June. Odds on this one, Makhachev, with the possible exception of Ankalaev, is the biggest, with the possible exception of Chimaev, is the biggest favorite on the card. Depending on where you look, he's floating around minus 600, Hooker plus 450 on the comeback. I'll say this much. I understand why Islam Makhachev is a 6-1 favorite over Dan Hooker here. Hooker fought just, a month ago. All the stylistic advantages that Makhachev has over Hooker will be amplified by that short turnaround. But what I'll say is this. Hooker presents much more underdog value to me than Rafael dos Anjos did. Because Rafael dos Anjos, to me, is an older, smaller, much more road-worn purveyor of the same wares that Islam Makhachev himself likes to dish out. Like, it's Makhachev taking on an older, worn-out, smaller version of himself versus an extremely dangerous offensive fighter on the feet as well as on the ground, where he'll, probably have to be perfect for at least a good portion of the fight, until he really starts rolling downhill. Unfortunately, Makhachev, of all the kind of guys cut from that Khabib Nurmagomedov mold, that, cookie cutter out in the Caucasus that spits out these, Sambo-based wrestle boxers with 4-guard haircuts, Makhachev might be the one who is closest to embodying the same type of gifts that Nurmagomedov has. Like, he's not quite on that level, but he's the one who seems to amplify both his grappling and his striking with some of that same next level athleticism that Khabib himself had. Against Hooker, who is, a dangerous, powerful striker, hard striker, he does have more stinging power than one-punch knockout power in his hands, but definitely, just ask James Vick. He can lamp you, but great kicks and knees as well. Makhachev's safest route to victory will be to get this thing to the ground as quickly as possible, and then just be careful of Hooker's underrated sweeps and submissions. But especially with Hooker coming back on short notice, and he's a guy that I suspect has a substantial weight cut, even at 155. He's just huge. I expect Makhachev will start getting this thing to the ground. Even if Hooker fights him off for the first round, those attempts are going to make Hooker tired first. He's going to start getting him to the ground. Once he gets there, we all know what this looks like. The outside leg right against the fence, the Dagestani handcuff, interspersed with the punches, always trying to take your back at the same time it's happening, just making you fight 3 fights at the same time. That suffocating, miserable pressure. And so even though I think Dan Hooker just has all-time balls of rock for taking this fight, and he's certainly daring to be great, if he wins this, it's one of the upsets of the year, one of the stories of the year, and would be a way to get himself right back into immediate title contention. But I can't pick it to happen. Give me Islam Makhachev by third round submission, but I expect we get a valiant performance out of Hooker for as long as it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. So you said that Hooker is a much bigger threat to Islam Makhachev than Rafael dos Anjos, and I 100% agree with that. I mean, Hooker is, as you mentioned, he's bigger. I still can't believe he I'm at the point where Hooker, I used to say I can't believe he used to make 145. Now I'm saying I can't believe he makes 155. He's that big of a dude. But yeah, he's a much better striker. He's more accurate. He has better movement, more power. Oh, well, I shouldn't say more power than I do. That might be close, but I think he's an underrated grappler, better in the clinch. But you said he's younger. There's a lot of things I like about Daniel Hooker. It's just a much tougher fight. Now Hooker's an accurate striker. He uses movement well. I said it before, he did really well to pull people into his punches. He did it to Paul Felder. He did it to Nasrat Haqparast in the last fight. He was trying to do it to Michael Chandler until he couldn't. But he keeps his distance well with a check left hook. He can hit while backing up, which few people can do. A lot of knees up the middle is a range finder. Something that's probably his best avenue to victory is keeping Makhachev back with jabs up the middle and knees up the middle, trying to time something. Good pop in his strikes. I would say plus power. He's not a big knockout guy, but it's good to calm. He's got the frame and everything for it. Good calf kicks. That's another route where he might be able to hurt Makhachev. Is going after his lead leg. He beat up Al Iaquinta. He beat up Al Iaquinta so bad that Al Iaquinta switched to southpaw with it. He's got incredible heart too. I mean, we saw just like the Edson Barboza fight, and he just fought a month ago, and like you mentioned, nobody wants to fight Islam Makhachev. He's like, yeah, I'll take it. Small camp, let's do it. He's an underrated wrestler. He's not going to out wrestle Islam Makhachev, but it would shock me if he snuck something in or just made it really difficult for Makhachev at times. Likes clinch takedowns. I think he's finally getting credit for his wrestling. For a long time, I don't think people talked about how good his wrestling is. He took Dustin Poirier down 4 times. Long range legs if he gets behind you. He defends. He's hard to take down because of how long his legs are. He has even when you pick a tall man up, his feet's still on the ground somehow. He has that going for him. He fades late though. He faded late against Dustin Poirier. That was a 5-round fight. This is not. He's also taken a lot of damage over the years, so that worries me. But other than Michael Chandler, he's got a really good chin. He'll take damage, stay in the fight. I mean, Dustin Poirier was cracking him, and we know how hard Dustin Poirier hits. Now move on to Makhachev. Yeah, I think you said a lot of things are great for southpaw. He's well rounded. No one's ever talked about his striking because of he's Dagestanian wrestler, but his striking has really come along. He's elusive. He uses feints well. His counter left hook is really good strike. A lot of kicks. He's not indestructible though. We talked about, nobody wants to fight Islam Makhachev, rightfully so, because he's such a tough stylistic matchup for people. We've seen him knocked out cold by Adriano Martins. David Ramos hurt him. Didn't put him out, but hurt him recently. So Dan Hooker could catch him on the feet. A lot of good kicks. He likes the dirty box, so he's not just shooting your wrestler. He'll get inside, grab the back of your head, punch you, beat you up there. But he's an elite wrestler. Incredible takedown defense. I like how he gets in the body, foot sweeps, fast entries, lift you up, slam you. Really good at chain and takedowns, turn the corner, keeping you moving, keeping you scrambling. His scrambles were against Armin Sarukian. I said this last time. I want to say it again. It's just really thing of beauty, like how great their scrambles were, on top, smother and top control. Not the Habib top control. Like I just want, but nobody does. But like he's not Habib. You can work your way back up, but he's got solid ground and pound. I mean, look what he did to a grappler like Thiago Moises, who's a good grappler. So, as prediction goes, these lines are way off. The Islam Makhachev over 6-1 favorite. Oh, some betting lines have him 7-1 favorite, -700 and stuff. That's insane. Like nobody should be like Kamaru Usman shouldn't be a 7-1 favorite against Dan Hooker. You know, Hooker's an underrated striker. He's an underrated grappler, but Makhachev is an elite of the elite wrestlers. And until I seen Hooker stop wrestling on those guys, and it would not shock me if he does. I'm gonna throw out there. It would not shock me if Dan Hooker makes it a much harder fight. If Makhachev struggles to take him down, the size advantage, like that would not shock me. But until I see him do it, I'm not going to predict him to win. So give me Makhachev by decision. But these lines are way off.
The co-main event of UFC 267 is an interim bantamweight title match between Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen. Yan, the 28-year-old Russian, is 15-2 overall. He is 7-1 in the UFC. He opened his UFC run with 7 straight wins over Teruto Ishihara, Jinsu Son, Douglas Silva de Andrade, John Dodson, Jimmy Rivera, Uriah Faber, and Jose Aldo, before running into Aljamain Sterling with his knee while Sterling was grounded. That led to a disqualification and a title fight loss. And they were set to rematch when neck surgery for Sterling necessitated a longer shelf time than expected. The UFC chose to make this interim title fight and brought in Sandhagen a bit controversially because Sandhagen dropped his most recent fight. Sandhagen, 29-year-old out of Colorado, is 14-3 overall. He is 7-2 in the UFC, and as I mentioned just now, he did lose his last fight. That was in July in the main event of UFC on ESPN 27. It was a split decision loss to the returned and resurgent TJ Dillashaw, though for what it's worth, quite a few observers, including yours truly, did score that one for Sandhagen. That put the brakes on a 2-fight win streak for Sandhagen over Marlon Moraes and Frankie Edgar, both by highlight reel knockout, which in turn allowed him to bounce back from his first UFC loss, which was getting run through by Sterling in about 90 seconds last summer at UFC 250, rear naked choke. Yan is a comfortable favorite here. He's -225. Sandhagen +185 as the underdog. Keith, I'm going to ask you for your take on this fight. I'm going to ask you for your pick, but just quick, right off the bat, did you feel good about Sandhagen being named for this fight?
I think they had no other options, simply because, well, I mean, I guess, Rob Font, actually. No, actually, I would have given it to Rob Font just because we just saw Sandhagen lose. So, I mean, I wasn't expecting you to ask me, so I really wasn't prepared. But yeah, I would have given it to Font just because that reason that Sandhagen recently lost. One thing I have an issue with, and I shouldn't say I have an issue with, but I don't think throwing an interim title just to make an interim title was necessary. Like, to me, it seems more of a punishment on Aljamain Sterling, who got injured, than like rewarding these guys. And one, it's because Aljamain's the way he won the title, but like, it's not his fault. Like, I know people like Aljamain Sterling somehow became this villain because his opponent illegally struck him. Like, and now he dropped out of a fight. Well, you know what? So many guys drop out of fights. Like, guys, it just was like bad timing. Like, you lost, you won you were losing the fight. You won the title. A lot of people didn't like how you won the title, and then you got injured. Well, you were out for a while. Then you got matched up, got injured. So it was like a perfect storm. But at the end of the day, like, we could have just made this a 5-round fight and it would have been fantastic. Like we didn't need an interim title on it. And honestly, I've always think the interim titles cheapen the current title, and it just sucks for Aljamain Sterling because if whoever wins this one, especially if it's Pritchard, he's going to be viewed as the actual champion.
Yep.
It just sucks. And
yeah,
but just make it a 5-round fight. So you want me to make my prediction?
Yeah, please let me know who you got.
Okay. Yeah, this is freaking fun. So even though I said I wouldn't have gave it to Corey Sandhagen. Like, this is a fantastic fight. But so would Rob Fontben. But the former champ Pritchard, he's very, very calm on the feet. He's almost relaxed on his feet. He just has this aura of confidence where nothing really bothers him. And a part of it's just he's just studying his foe, especially early. He gets in there and he's a builder. He picks up the pace as the fight goes on, but he's more just studying, seeing what they're doing, picking up their tells. The problem is it makes him get off to a slow start. And MMA's only 5 rounds. It's not boxing where you can kind of give away rounds, and he kind of does. And that's because he's got such a boxing background. He almost seems like lack of urgency at times. Like he's had 250 box matches. He's so technically sound a boxer, but sometimes he doesn't throw enough. Go back to his fights against Jimmy Rivera. Like, yeah, he caught Jimmy Rivera at times and dropped them and kind of stole the rounds. But like every single round, Jimmy Rivera was winning up until that point. And if he doesn't land that one shot, Jimmy Rivera wins the round. He gave Jose Aldo, like, I remember going deep into that fight against Jose Aldo, and I'm like, this fight is closer than it should be. It felt like Pritchard was playing with his food a little bit. And, so that's the things I don't like about him. Things I do like about him, I mean, he can fight for both sides. He walks down his foes. He's stunning, but he's setting up traps for later. And I saw this in film, and I forget who did it, but it was really, really good breakdown. He was talking about he throws 2 spots because he'll test you. He'll throw a little short shot, see how you react to it. Oh, you turn this way, I want to do it. You turn that way. And then the next time, instead of throwing that, he'll fake that shot. You're going to roll. You're going to do something that you're going to react the way he wants. And then he's already throwing that counter punch to the spot that he knows you're going to go. And then that's what he gets you. That's what he did with Jimmy Rivera. That's what elite strikers do. That's above my knowledge of striking. It's much I feel like I have a pretty good knowledge of striking. That's much, much more advanced than I understand. That's like Freddie Roach, that kind of boxing coach type stuff. I wish I had that knowledge. I'll pretend I do, but not even close. Not a lot of tells on his side. Doesn't really load up on things. He does crack really hard, and the reason why he cracks hard is because he has fantastic footwork. His feet are always in the right position when he throws. Defensively, he has a very boxing style to his game, though. Defensively, he kind of does a lot of turtling behind his stuff. I don't like that, but his offense is so sharp that it makes up for it. He's hard to hit because of the way he turtles up right, though. I still don't like it. I wish he'd slip more. A lot of uppercuts inside. He works really good uppercuts. He can wrestle. Body lock and trip takedowns are kind of his thing. Great at winning scrambles. His only loss besides the disqualification was against Magomedov, who's a very, very good wrestler. Actually, a fight that I thought he won, but he did. The reason why I told that he had really good hips. He has almost like a Jose Aldo game to him, where you can be in so deep and he still can find a way to cut his hips, end up on top. A perfect example was who just fought first fight of the card? Was it last week? Jonathan Martinez, right? It was the first fight, right?
Yeah, he was the first.
Moments, there was somebody. Who was he fighting? The guy shot in on him, and the newcomer shot in on him, and Martinez was so deep and somehow was able to scramble, get his hips turned out, almost whizzing in. And Petroski has that, so he's extremely hard. Take him down. So really, he's not much of a submission threat in that sense, but he's so well rounded. Now move with Corey Sandhagen. Oh, man, this guy's fun to watch on film too. Long and lengthy, he's so fluid, incredible movement. He just switches stance so well, switches back and forth, never lets you get comfortable because you never know what he's kind of bringing at you. Uses a lot of feints to just kind of get you guessing, just touching, wait until the openings, until he unloads, targets the body. He likes knees in close. You come in close. He's throwing up the knees up the middle. A lot of kicks to the body, even throws kicks just to force you to just lift your arm and just take one off your forearm, which he knows will hurt you later. Calf kicks. Suddenly and I said this last time, suddenly he has like cracking power. I mean, you saw what he did to Frankie Edgar. Obviously, that was more athleticism than power, but what he did to Marlon Moraes, hurt TJ Dillashaw. He's a solid wrestler too. Like, he doesn't get enough credit for that. He's good in the scrambles. If you take him down, he's very hard to hold down. I mean, you saw what TJ Dillashaw, how much struggle he had. But even more than just hold him down, how hard it took TJ to get him down. TJ had to waste all his effort, and then he still got up. Just for the record, you said that you thought Sandhagen won. I actually scored it for Dillashaw, but I have no issue with him, like, a very extremely close fight. So as far as prediction goes, God, this is my fight of the night. To me, it's the easiest pick for fight of the night. I think it's going all 5 rounds. I had issue with how easy Dillashaw was able to get inside on times. He kind of trapped Sandhagen, cut off the cage on him a couple times, and it was really surprising because that's Sandhagen's game, his ability to move. And if you can kind of trap him in a little bit, he's a much different fighter. That's when he had struggles. And a lot of, obviously, TJ's games is trapping and then using a lot of wrestling into it, where Petr Yan's game is much different, but still that trapping sense. If he can do that against Sandhagen, I think he should have a lot of success, because now he's kind of fighting off his back foot, his distance, his size. I mean, size is still a big thing, but his distance control, a lot of things he likes to do, gets stops. However, one issue I had against why I think I might have taken Aljamain Sterling to beat Petr Yan. I can't remember, but the one thing I've always hate is Petr Yan's lack of urgency. If he gives away rounds to Corey Sandhagen, he might not be able to catch up, and that concerns me. But that said, if TJ Dillashaw can get inside, I think Petr Yan can too. I think he's going to target the bar. I think we see a lot of body shots from him, based on when a guy's elusive and moves, the body's a much bigger target than trying to chase the head. And Yan is a sharpshooter trying to catch a target. So I think we're in treat for some really, really fun technical boxing between two masters of the game. I just think Jan's going to land the cleaner, harder shot. So give me Yan by decision in my no-brainer pick for the night.
Outstanding. This is my pick for fight of the night as well. It's going to be one of the rare cases where a fight near the top of the card wins fight of the night, and it's not stealing anything from a gem on the prelims. I think this is just going to be an absolute banger. I think the dynamic favors Sandhagen to get up early. He's an aggressive starter. Yan is more of a deliberate starter. Like, not you said it right. He's not a slow starter, but he's making his reads. You know, he
and John, sorry to interrupt you. John Jones and Anderson Silva both did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're two of the greatest fighters of all time. They're winning. Yeah. They're planning to win the entire fight instead of winning rounds. You're just rolling the dice a little bit. That.
Yeah, and I think the dynamic favors Yan to probably start to pick up momentum in the later rounds. I liked that in the Dillashaw fight, regardless of whom you scored it for, because the last 3 rounds in particular were extremely close, but I thought Sandhagen in particular looked great in the 5th round. So knowing that he has 5-round cardio to fight at a pretty high pace, it wasn't 2016 Dillashaw pace, but even 2021 Dillashaw pace it's pretty grueling. That would give me hope, but I'd feel better about it if he were on a 3-month camp instead of a 1-month camp. I honestly think Yan should try to employ his sometimes underused and overlooked wrestling. If not to actually win rounds with his wrestling, at least to give Sandhagen something else to think about on the feet. I don't know if he will, or I don't know if he will in time. I think Yan is as good as he is at navigating range. And to me, Yan has always been a short, compact guy who's surprisingly good at covering the distance on taller fighters, where Sandhagen is a long and lengthy guy with great movement who's surprisingly good at getting off offense on the inside if that's where the fight takes place. Like, he's not great at keeping guys out of that range, but he's good at landing offense when they're in that range if it comes to it. I expect Sandhagen to get the better of the striking and until or unless he starts to get tired in the later rounds. Like, I'm really enjoy his kicking game. I think it's going to bother Jan, who, like you said, tends to use kind of a high boxing guard. I think kicks clattering off that guard or kicks landing to the body are going to like make him start to question that or adjust to that. And I am picking Corey Sandhagen to win enough rounds, at least early on, and then hang on for the win. I'm going to take the moderate upset here and give me Corey Sandhagen by decision in also my pick for fight of the night. Those are 14 fights down and discussed and analyzed to death, and we finally arrive at the main event of UFC 267, a UFC light heavyweight title bout between defending champ Jan Blachowicz and challenger Glover Teixeira. Blachowicz, the 38-year-old Pole, is 28-8 overall. He's 11-5 since joining the UFC. He has won 5 straight fights since his last loss, a third-round TKO at the hands of Thiago Santos. Those wins are over Luke Rockhold, Ronaldo Jacare Souza, Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, and most recently, this past March, Israel Adesanya, whom he turned away in Adesanya's attempt to be a 2-division reigning champ, won by unanimous decision. He'll be taking on Teixeira, who also carries a 5-fight win streak, his second 5-fight win streak in the UFC, into his second title shot in the UFC. The 42-year-old Brazilian by way of Connecticut is 32-7 overall. He is 15-5 in the UFC. His 5-fight win streak, Karl Roberson, Jan Kutalaba, Nikita Krylov, Anthony Smith, and most recently, last November, Thiago Santos, whom he took some artillery from in the early going, came back to dominate on the ground, and eventually won by third-round rear naked choke. Blachowicz, for just the second time in his last 12 fights, I believe it is the betting favorite here. Like, even the doubters are taking a break this weekend. Blachowicz, minus 290, Teixeira, plus 245 as the underdog. We talked a little bit about, off the top, about how unlikely a scenario this title fight would be, you know, if we discussed this 5-7 years ago. Also surprising, again, that there's no smoke and mirrors. This is the legit champ against the most deserving challenger. And thirdly, and equally surprising, it's an interesting fight that, like, I'm excited and looking forward to this fight. Like, color me surprised 3 times over. To me, the real question here is, I'm not saying that there's any kind of smoke and mirrors to Glover Teixeira's 5-fight win streak. Not at all. Like, they're all legit guys, and at least 4 of them were ranked guys. I mean, you can't do much better than beating 4 ranked guys in a row and getting a title shot. And even Karl Roberson is, you know, underratedly dangerous. But the first 3 wins, Teixeira, veteran, tough, tons of offensive weapons, was kind of taking out the flaky and the flawed. Like Karl Roberson, Jan Kutalaba, Nikita Krylov, all dangerous fighters with obvious routes to victory against them. Then the 2 wins that really propelled him to this title shot over Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos, they both involved him getting shellacked in the early going, weathering the storm, coming back and wiping out a foe who, in the case of Anthony Smith, was just completely exhausted, and in the case of Santos, has just always been very deficient on the ground. Guys, again, that a guy like Glover Teixeira has obvious avenues to victory against. If he tries, he's not gonna, I don't think he tries. I don't think he tries to get beat up, but like, if his best route to victory is to weather the storm against Blachowicz and then wait for Blachowicz to get tired or make a mistake, he's dead. That's not that. Those are the things that Jan Blachowicz has fixed. Like the flaky, hittable on the feet, like kind of questionable gas tank Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz who couldn't wrestle, who got out wrestled by Pat Cummins. That's another man from another dimension. Blachowicz is just a bad matchup for Teixeira at this point in his career. Like, Teixeira's weapons, chin and heart, obviously, like his ability to withstand punishment. And I know heart sounds like an intangible, but he has literally willed himself to victory in his last 2 fights against guys who would have finished most other fighters in the UFC. And he's doing it in his 40s. Always identified and presented as a boxer. Like, he can kick, but just, good combination puncher, heavy hands. He's a guy that during those kind of wilderness years when he had visa issues before he could get to the UFC, was fighting up at like 230 pounds against, the Sokajus of the world, and his power carried over fine to heavyweight. He's a heavy-handed guy. He doesn't load up, just everything hurts. Just like he's got rolls and nickels in his gloves. And then again, under like his wrestling and his top game have been one of the most underrated skill sets in mixed martial arts for 15 years now. For the guy that came up through the pit, was most famous as Chuck Liddell's main sparring partner, went and, then we moved to Connecticut. He has a crushingly heavy top game. He, even at 42, where he doesn't have anything resembling like a clean single leg shot, he's good at just crashing into you and ending up on top when you guys get on the ground. And then it's all over. Great, just top position, strong man, big man submissions. He's going to arm triangle choke you, or he's going to punch you until you turn your back and then take your neck that way. I just don't think he's going to do any of those things to Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz is going to have faster hands. Blachowicz will be able to take the fight to the ground if he wants to, I believe. And Teixeira's defensive wrestling has never been as good as his offensive wrestling, and his bottom game has never been as good as his top game. So this one's kind of built for Blachowicz to just take one more step towards greatness. I mean, he's already passed your Shogun Huas and your Rashad Evans and your Forrest Griffins as guys that are all-time divisional greats, but never defended the title. Even with Randy Couture, never defended the light heavyweight title, even though he had it twice. Now he's going to pass your Lyoto Machida and your Rampage Jackson. And he's going to enter that rarefied territory of Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Frank Shamrock, John Jones, Daniel Cormier. Legendary, underrated Polish power. Give me Jan Blachowicz by round 4, probably a TKO on the ground as Teixeira is just beat up and exhausted.
It's funny, you put his name on the guys you just said, it just seems weird, but I love that he's in that category. Like, I just love that he just kept showing up to work every day, and I love it. So I want to say something before I get to my actual break, because in the beginning of the episode, I was saying, like, I hardly ever root for a fighter. It's never like a personal thing. I'm rooting for Glover Teixeira just because I'm rooting for an incredible story. That has nothing to do with Jan Blachowicz. Like, he's a very likable guy himself. If the roles were reversed and Glover Teixeira was the current champion and Jan Blachowicz was the guy who worked his way all up to a title shot and he's right there at the cusp, I'd probably root for him. And when he came back, when he won the title and he came back to Poland with the belt in the airport and the whole country showed up, that was one of the nicest moments, like, in the sports history. So I just want to say, like, I like Jan Blachowicz. Who I think is going to win this fight? It's you. All right, I'll give my prediction at the end, but let me get into the X and O. So Jan Blachowicz can fight from both stances. He's a technically sound striker. Everything's tight. Good jab, short left hook. That's his big power shot. He targets the body. A lot of hand fighting. He likes to control the hands. Did it against Corey Anderson. Sits on his punches to generate a lot of power. I mean, you can ask Corey Anderson. You can ask Dominic Reyes. You can ask Luke Rockhold. Those are all good examples of how much power this guy has. I mean, just look at his legs and his thickness. You can just tell that he can land. His kicking game is an absolute thing of beauty too. I mean, the Dominic Reyes fight, the fight that won on the title was. You want to say
the
something?
bruise, like Reyes's ribs made me want to tap out. Yeah.
I wonder if he's going to throw as many kicks against a guy like Glover Teixeira, whose best chance of victory is catching a catch. Who, by the way, he likes a single leg. catch a single leg and work off of that. But you might see a lot more calf kicks, like going down low on the body, which would be a really brilliant strategy. Which I could really see. One negative about him is he can kind of fight at a slow pace, get a little too cautious. I mean, like Jacare fight, I mean, that was a lot of clinching and stuff. It was a terrible fight, but they can be a little gun shy. But his clinch striking is strong. Get inside there, beat you up there. Takedown defense used to be god awful, beyond terrible. At one time, he was probably the worst wrestler on the entire UFC roster, at least the light heavyweight division. But if Jacare struggled to get him out, who's, by the way, another fantastic wrestler, I don't know if Glove to share will. And then we actually saw an offensive wrestling game. Israel Adesanya, obviously, it's a much different type fighter than Glove to share, and obviously on the ground and much smaller. But I don't think many people would have guessed that Yaozong would win a fight wrestling. If we were talking about all the surprises from 5 years ago, I don't think that would have been like, well, that guy's the worst wrestler ever. And we're not saying that about Israel Adesanya. He is a black belt. He got a submission over Nikita Krylov too, so he has a little bit of a submission threat. I'd be very surprised if he submitted Glover to share, unless it was something like he caught him on a shot, jumped on a rear naked choke when Glover to share his brain is fried. Okay, I don't really count those. I mean, straight grappling, he catches Glover, that'd be really surprise me. As far as Glover, so I was watching the press conference today, and he described himself as a boxer in the feet, and I think that's obviously the good summary of what he is on the feet. He does not throw a lot of kicks. He's got a very short, tight boxing style. He likes to bob and weave, his head bouncing off the center line. High guard defense, so he's got his hands high, bobbing, but tight hooks. I think his power is grossly overrated, though, especially at this age. Like I don't know the last time he cracked somebody and hurt them. I don't know the last time he cracked somebody and knocked him out. His hand speed has also decreased. Like, while he's earned his title shot, that doesn't mean that his skills haven't deteriorated. Because there are some skills that deteriorated that just are gone. Like, his hand speed is gone. It's not coming back. His power is gone. It's not coming back. But there's other skills, like his grappling is taken to another level. Another thing I'm worried about him is I'm still worried about his chin. Carl Robinson hurt him bad. Thiago Santos hurt him. I mean, there's a list of lists. You said that he willed himself to victory, and I agree with that. He does this incredible recovery where, like, he seems like he's hurt, and he finds a way to keep rolling on the ground and getting hit with shot, but a lot of them be deflecting shots and not getting, like, in a bad position where he can't move and just getting battered in. Like, somehow he finds a way to trick the referee to let him keep going. So he wants to fight. One way he gets to fight to the ground is get hurt. Have the guy going for ground and pound and then grab a leg. I don't know how often you can use that strategy, but another way he gets a takedown is what I like about his game, and probably the best part, he disguises his takedowns with his strikes. He's enough of a threat on the feet where he can kind of strike himself. He likes to throw, like Ryan Bader used to be really good at this too. Tito would be good at it. Like, throw something high while shooting low. So you kind of force them to have to lift their hands up to get underneath the hips. A lot of single legs. He likes to get in there, run the pipe. He's relentless to get the takedowns. If he's sprawled out, you sprawl out him, he's still going to keep working his way, cutting corners, and finally get the takedown. If he's on top, very, very, like you mentioned, he's at an underrated grappling game. It has really grown into one of the best ever in the light heavyweight division and just in UFC in general. Smother and top control, very mean ground and pound. He's got that Randy Couture where he sits in the half guard and postures up and just beats him, like something Randy Couture does. This is something Glover has done a really good job at against really good people. Like, his last two fights, I mean, say what you want to Thiago Santos, he just won a UFC main event. Anthony Smith has gone a nice run since that moment. Obviously, he's a Brazilian just black belt. He has got 9 submission wins, so he can submit you. And he's shown recently, which is should be a question mark at 42, but does he have the cardio to go 5 minutes if it went that way? Well, he did against Anthony Smith and was knocking Anthony Smith's teeth out during the process. So as far as the prediction goes, if Glover gets this fight to the ground, I think he could win. That's a big if. You said that he needs to, like, he's willed himself to victory. Like, I love the way you described that, and I'm not doing it justice. And I feel like it's like that war movie where I think it was, I'm not sure, it might have been Saving Private Ryan, or it was maybe it was Band of Brothers or something, where he, like, there's an old or maybe I think it was Black Hawk Down, where there was this beat up guy, and like the captain asked him to like hold this line for 10 more minutes, and the guy's like, I can't. And he said something like 10 minutes is a long time. And he's like, yeah, that's why I'm not asking you for 20. Like, we're not asking, and I don't guess. I know that's a famous movie. I might have the time off. Someone in the comments, let me know what movie. The movie is definitely a war thing where somebody asked him to hold something for a minute, and the guy had a great line. Like, that's why I'm not asking for 2 minutes is a long time. Yeah, that's why I'm not asking for 5 or something like that. I don't know. Whatever movie that is. Put it in Braveheart, Gladiator. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not asking Glover Teixeira to will his way to 2 victories. I'm just asking to will his way to 1 more victory. Just somehow beat the odds. You talked about Jan Blachowicz always being an underdog. Glover Teixeira's been an underdog a lot during this streak too. His last 2 fights, he was big underdogs. I just don't simply see it. I think you said Jan Blachowicz is the bad stylistic matchup. I agree. I don't trust his chin anymore. Like, yeah, he's had this incredible recovery, but he's still been hurt. He's been hurt bad. I think Blachowicz is a more intelligent fighter. He seems like he's the thinker. He's out there thinking. I could see him hurting Glover Teixeira multiple times, going in, trying to finish the fight, but more cautious the way he does it, like controlled chaos to try to finish him, and does it 3 or 4 times to eventually he just does. So I expect him to catch Glover Teixeira. I think he puts him out in the second round by TKO.
And there you have it. Neither of us super happy to be the bearers or predictors of this news, but one of these guys has to lose. They are 2 of the goodest dudes in the space right now. And yeah, two picks for Jan Blachowicz by finish in the main event of UFC 267.
Did you see the press conference where they tried trash talking each other? It was still like very like nice trash talk.
It was cordial. Like they can't.
It was great. Like it was like, I love they were trash talking, but in like 2 old men at the YMCA trash talking during a game of horse, or or cornhole. Like, hey buddy, wait to see this shot.
I mean, can't you see just like 10 years from now, both these guys retired and just like flipping steaks in the backyard and like talking about this fight?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not even 10 years from now, like 10 days from now.
If one of these guys is retired from 10 days from now, I mean, we'll get to that on the recap. Speaking of which, I mean, this has been the SureDog Radio preview for UFC 267, Blachowicz versus Teixeira. Join us. This is an early card. It starts like early afternoon on the East Coast because it's taking place in Abu Dhabi once again. So
it's like 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, it's in the morning.
It's like really early.
For those who don't know, those who aren't regular followers of this show, I go to bed at about 9 a.m. Eastern time, like 8 a.m. my time. So my choice is either going to be to just stay up for like 24 hours straight or take like some like Unisom and try to go to bed early and wake up for this thing. At any rate,
10:30 a.m. is, I just checked.
Ooh. So Keith and I will be here around 3, 4 in the afternoon, recapping this thing. We will talk about all 15 fights. What was good? What was bad? What's next? On a card with 2 title fights, 3 top 10 contender fights, and the hottest prospect in the sport just on the main card. We're going to have a lot of shit to talk about. So tune in. You can find a link on the SureDog front page or just go directly to the SureDog YouTube page. We chat through YouTube live stream. So we'll be taking your questions, your comments, your hot takes, any of these picks that we got wrong, let us have it. It's always a fun conversation in there. We love interacting with you back and forth. Anything else before I sign off for us?
No, guys, just if you made it this far, you guys are warriors. This is a really long show. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff for us, guys. We could use it.
And Keith's high school French teacher?